Hey everybody, welcome back to X's for Show, your premier media response show. I'm Nico, and you can find me at Nico Action.
What?
Why are
is
we
it?
already starting with this?
What is this already?
Kevo, can you go to the poster for Scream 4?
Sure.
On the big image.
I know what you're saying. Hold on a sec.
New decade, new rules. 1, don't pick up the phone. You know he's only calling us.
God damn it.
Very mad at you.
God damn
You
it.
are very stupid, and I'm even more mad that you didn't come up with that before this episode.
I know. You've had all week. The
You've
poster's
had
been there
all
the whole
week.
time. You could have arranged the whole song by now.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we are TK and Kevo, very disappointed. Where can they find you, Teek?
You can find me. I'll be microblogging about this over on that classic microblogging service known as Twitter at TK Elemental.
And I am your producer, Kevo, really excited to discuss these new rules. I've got them. You've got them too. We've decided to, for the anniversary of the franchise, the initial film, we will be covering the Screams. Nico, do you have yourself together enough yet?
He doesn't. He's about to break again.
He is about
See,
to
there it
break
is.
again.
Calm down, Bill Hader playing Stefan.
This stabbing has everything. So
You are not Jimmy Fallon.
okay, here's what it is. As Kevo was saying, Scream actually came out in December, like right around Kevo's birthday.
It came out on December 20th.
So I said right around Kevo's birthday.
No, I'm saying like that's wild. Like it's
Yeah.
it's insane because it's not any part of the that couldn't be closer to Christmas. It's not any part of the movie. Like it's not even they're in the middle of the school year. It's not even the end of the first semester or anything. It's just because the second one does too. It's so wild that both of them are out at Christmas. So you were seeing them in theaters during Christmas stuff.
And that was actually a point of contention from the reading I've done with the producers, where they were like not sure about putting it out at Christmas, but the original point was, what else were teens going to be seeing at Christmas on Christmas break? Beavis and Butthead was the only thing it was really up against for teens. And it helped.
And 96 though, I mean, what are you against? Hunchback of Notre Dame? Like it's a very different kind of parallel where like nobody was programming for aggressive interest for teens. Like not that teens don't have a breadth of interest. There's always great comedies out, and like, you know, there's always some sort of Mandy Moore, Shane West piece about stepping in snow for angel footprints or whatever. But like, you know, it really is so interesting that I remember being like 9 and 10 and like Scream was it. Like it's what we talked about. Like at 10 years old. Scream.
You and I were in 5th grade. I had just turned 11. You were just under 11.
It was a big thing. And like, so my best friend was a guy who really, as a little kid, is a guy named Aldo who really helped like shape my worldview. And he was a really big influence on me. And he had an older sister who, let's go with, super responsibly allowed us to watch adulter programming. And so Scream was something that I was able to get my hands on at 10, even though my parents didn't really want me to. And I remember I'd always loved Goosebumps. I'd always loved, you know, everything like that, like dumb, fun kid horror. But like, this was a moment for me where I came to understand the power and complexity of horror storytelling in a way that transformed my personal trajectory.
Very much the same. I was a grade older than you guys, but by this point I was the same age as Kevo.
You hear that? He's a hot older man.
There you go. But yeah, I mean, I was still 11, but I remember I saw this in theaters. And like, nobody stopped us. I remember the one they were really worried about that we had seen earlier that year was Romeo and Juliet. Parents were not super stoked about the group 6th grade trip to go see Romeo and Juliet, but I guess they'd maybe given up by Scream. By that point, it was just – they're going to go where they're going to go. But, you know, it's funny. You like the – I don't know. I don't know if it's – I mean, nobody stopped us. I remember the one they were really worried about that we had seen earlier that year was Romeo and Juliet. Parents were not super stoked about the group 6th grade trip to go see Romeo and Juliet, but I guess they'd maybe given up by Scream. By that point, it was just – they're going to go where they're going to go. But, you know, it's funny. You like the we're just kind of swinging into movies for kids with disposable income in the 90s here. And Scream falls in a really interesting place that they are kind of saying, this is going to be the time where they've got free time and maybe a little bit of money. Probably best to release it here. And I find it so fascinating that for all the changes that you can see happened to this movie, some of which are really documented, others, like something that we were discussing when we rewatched this together recently, Woodsboro is not the name of a California town. It simply is not. And that is because Kevin Williamson wrote it about a North Carolina town, like all of his stories. And Woodsboro is a perfectly East Coast town name. But, they changed it to California for no reason that matters in the movie, except I think they must have figured you'll never believe where we're shooting is on the East Coast. Like, it looks so much like California.
Well, actually, I'm gonna talk about that, and I want to talk about the perception of California in the '90s as the reckless wildlands of
America. Just give me one more second, then.
Okay.
I think that it was really feasible to make the change had they wanted to gussy things up to make it Christmas time.
I get that.
And even if, because by then, Scream 2 or 3 could have been about what are the rules on Christmas. And so it's really interesting to me that knowing all that they knew about when this would come out, or maybe didn't know, maybe something happened and this was a really last minute change to the schedule to put it out then. But, I love that we're covering it now. Like it is a weird part of the lore for the movie to be a movie of Christmas time without being a Christmas movie.
So I can't wait to jump into that. Now, we have my Scream story. We have TK's Scream story. But before we roll into the actual Screamsings, Kevo, do you have a Scream story? And how did you come into this franchise? Was it me? Was it before me?
It was actually before you. I had gotten into this summer between 8th and 9th grade, which, at the time felt like so far removed from Scream 3, but now I realize was 6 months later?
Yeah.
And so viewing the complete trilogy at that time, I got into my own little horror genre phase at that moment, which for me wasn't anything too hard, but was like catching up on the I Know What You Did Last Summer. We really had this little and the urban legends. I was very into urban legends too, and now as an adult realized that's actually Emma Swan in the lead. Fascinating that I never connected that until recently. But we had this new revival of horror in the late 90s and early 2000s, and it was a tough swing because horror had sort of died down. It started to become pandered because of how franchise had become, which is ironic considering the era we're in now, where franchises are once again being panned. But yeah, as someone who was never really a horror person, I watched Buffy for the fantasy more than I watched it for the horror. This was something that I felt was still palatable and accessible to me, even though I wasn't really about the guts and gore. I was about the scares and, the tense and the tension, and I really feel like these really pack a lot of that in
there. Scream is responsible for, I think, sort of like shaping the narrative. We talk a lot about how tropes and genre, but genre was at one point someone's idea. You got a thing?
No, I'm gonna let you finish, but then I'm gonna get into it.
No, because go ahead.
I mean, it's Kevin Williamson's thing. Kevin Williamson never wants to write a script where people aren't talking about the thing that they are in. Dawson's Creek is 5 years of kids in a teen drama talking about being in a teen drama, referencing the moments that they are having that are written to exactly emulate moments that just happened on 90210 1 to 3 years earlier. But this time around, they keep pointing at the moment and going, we can't be in the middle of a romantic triangle. And the Scream movies play out in a very similar way. You have Jamie Kennedy, who sits down in this situation that is in no way it's coded, but it is in no way like said to be science fiction or fantasy. The monster is a human being. He does not have professed powers that we understand. Like we were talking about the last time we were together, he's weirdly invulnerable to glass, but that's just like movie stupidity. That's not, that's not a part of it. And so, but still you have Jamie Kennedy referring to the rules of the universe that they are in. And it is this fascinating back and forth of being self-referential while also folding that into the plot and making that reference part of the killer's motivation. So it never steps over the line into kind of fourth wall breaking satire.
Well, I mean, I think it does a lot later on. Like, I think,
yes,
but never too far.
So
it's sometimes too far, but usually
it's sometimes really stupid, but nobody ever looks at the camera.
So I want to start by getting into the first movie so we could talk about all of this awesome stuff.
Yes.
So let's start with Scream 1. Now, I think, the first Scream, I think it is such an important thing to consider that this poster is evocative and definitive of the franchise. Number one, you have Drew Barrymore front and center. Her role is so not the point of the movie, which becomes the point of the movie, becomes the point of the movie, the point of the franchise. And I think that's so fascinating because I remember as a kid thinking, oh, I know who Drew Barrymore is. This ploy worked on a literal child as much as it would work on an adult. And I think that is so significant.
Well, and that's what the Scream movies did. They said we can bring stuff in and make it really big, even when it is not central to the plot. The whole crazy thing about Drew Barrymore being there is she's the little girl from E.T. She's the girl from Firestarter. She's having her Robert Downey Jr. moment where we think she's just flamed out and burned her career before she's 16. And then she shows up in an iconic horror role that kind of changes the entire trajectory of her career and completely resets the narrative. And it's funny because it really is similar to Robert Downey Jr. We watched him be who he was, flame out, and then come back in an iconic role that really changed the trajectory of his career. And the Scream franchise just sort of said over and over again, we've got slots for stuff like this. They're not always a slot for changing a person's career trajectory, but like putting Jada Pinkett at the time into the role that she's going to be in is a really huge statement, different than the Drew Barrymore statement, but it's there to make one. And it's just kind of constantly like that throughout Scream.
So, okay, you got something?
No, go.
And I think one of the things that becomes a hallmark of the films to the point where it actually does become fourth wall satire is where I did think it did happen, like with the opening kill. The opening kill is a ritualistic part of a Scream franchise in that it sets the everything in motion. And when we think about the first kill in Scream, this Drew Barrymore murder, it hits so many of the visual trademarks. We have the phone call. We have a couple of the famous quotes. We have the game. And it's like Jigsaw, you did not invent playing games. I mean, obviously this didn't either. But, we have the game here. And it's so fascinating. The use of windows, the use of by the pool side, the use of the distance disemboweling or the disemboweling, as we can call it, right? Everything about this, from the slow creeping horror, the affected choices of, oh, she lives in a quaint, idyllic place, to, wait, when you think about it, it is secluded. And, when you think about it, there are a lot of easy entrance points. And it is hard to get to a neighbor. And the surreal fear that this built into existing as a suburbanite was just masterful.
There's that line from that Gail has at the very end of the film when she's doing her newscast where she's talking about that these homes are far from the sirens and danger of the city life that these suburbanites thought that they had fled, which is such a huge element of this film, really wrapped up there at the very end.
TK, one of the things that I love the most about talking about film with you is that like actual film things. And one of the things that I thought was really specific that I called this movie out on a lot, where a lot of the naturalistic tones, a lot of the very gentle, kind of earthy tones throughout this early scene. And I think one of the things that I think is so interesting about it is the earthy tones contrasted with the amount of blood, that shock of red, right? If she were in black, her blood would simply not show the same way. And, I think that's what happens when you have Wes Craven, the master of horror, and Kevin Williamson, the guy who would come on to define the voice of a generation. You could have only had John Carpenter and Amy Sherman Palladino.
Well, it's funny because I said to you when we were talking about the colors, like I associate the colors less with this particular film and what they're attempting to do in the film, and more with the culture of the time. Like these were earth tones, like I said, particularly burnt sienna. You see everywhere. You see a lot of tanned leather, ox bloods in like interiors and cars. And it's funny because I associate a lot of that. Party of Five is so orange. It's lit so orange. It's lit so at sunset. Everybody's brown haired. Everything is brown. Everything is, early 90s Pottery Barn. It's got sort of a Southwestern aesthetic. And so we pull in one of the flagship actors from a show like Party of Five. We pull that color palette in with her. And I mean, like the hair alone is just such like a calming brown, this is not a blonde bombshell. And
even this haircut, when they were struggling at the beginning of production and almost had the plug pulled, one of the points that was made was like, this haircut wasn't really sexy.
No, not at all. I mean, look at the lip. It's like an almost brown lip. And then you're right. What do you do with all this? How do you say, like, we're telling the story that we're telling?
And Jiffy Pop is like so grocery store. You can't look at Jiffy Pop without being like, yeah, that's just like a thing you throw on the stove. Like, it's not a romantic setting. There's nothing sensual. She's not the scene in Stab that they mock this with.
Yeah, exactly. And, I mean, Sid, when you first see her, she is in a very covering nightgown. And this was something I actually really appreciate that they did with the first movie, and then it kind of decreases in their ability to handle it and to do it effectively. But, like, there is something... a 16-year-old girl is going to be a sexual creature. We should not be sexualizing her as an audience, but the idea that she is maybe going to have sex with her boyfriend is just a truth that we should accept. And there's something very like, it's possible, but it is not, we're not trying to sexualize her with the nightgown that she is in. It is not her day clothes.
Like even her day clothes though, like it's not always this, because then she's got like cute t-shirts. She's not
exactly.
Completely sexless. Yeah, but they're not hyper-sexualizing.
Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit more of that. But the nightgown in the first thing has this very much this vibe of vulnerability of, when Skeet Ulrich comes in the door when that's happening, you're seeing something that is a little bit like, this is a more vulnerable state from her. This is closer to where she is in the bedroom, but it is still so tame compared to like even how they talk about who dies in movies, and they're like sluts die, and that sort of like full covering nightgown is not a sluts die nightgown. So I think they made some really interesting choices with the colors, with the costumes, all around. I think it really set that they knew they were lighting the path for how the rest of horror was going to go in the 90s.
I only regret that outside of this shot, great shot, that's a phenomenal screen cap, I tend to think that Skeet Ulrich kind of looks like a wet horse in a lot of this movie.
Yeah, he really does. It's funny. It's wet horse is such a good way to describe it because he's still beautiful. Like if you just look at his
majestic man, yeah.
If you look at his face in every scene, it's still beautiful, but it is always like, why is he a little bit too greasy? It's not hair slicked back; it's didn't wash.
And it's the lighting thing, and it's some of the the framing choices on this movie are some of the best framing choices in 90s horror. The amount of intimacy created by forming parallels in shots
Where's that fan coming from?
it doesn't fucking matter because the fan is us.
Yeah.
We are blowing the ghost face love at them.
I tell you what, he would have made a great Paul Atreides.
I also think he would have been a really, really good Scarecrow in Batman.
Yeah, he could still do that.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Okay, now I want to get to a big hallmark of Scream. Rewatchability right away. Scream #1's rewatchability is some of the best rewatchability of any film I have ever seen. Every subtle performance. Like, there's this scene early on where, out of nowhere, Stu, in that group shot that Keva was just showing, goes, I ain't killer, man. And, immediately...
It's one of those things...
Oh, God. No, I was going to say, immediately, Billy is like, no one said you did. And it just kind of seems like Billy's weird, but then it ultimately, rewatchability...
Everything about everything that they are saying as you are watching it the first time just feels like kids goofing off, and Stu is just a jerk, and Billy is just protective because he knows that Sydney is going to be sensitive to this. But then when you rewatch, it's not even below the surface. It's right there. And there's another performance that comes later that I very strongly compare to the ones in this one in terms of that rewatchability, where, like, when you are watching it the first time and don't think that you should suspect some of these characters, you write some of it off. But then when you actually get to the plot, it's really fascinating the way that they misdirect you.
And the last time we rewatched it, you guys really pulled on the their homoeroticism thread, which is like its own rewatch in and of itself, separate from the, there's kind of the homoeroticism mixed with seeing them and knowing they're the killers. But then there's a rewatch you can also do where you're really paying attention to what the writing and the directing and the producing is doing to make everybody a suspect throughout. So so when you know who it is, I mean, it doesn't. I think Jamie Kennedy really comes off as a plausible killer. I also think Rose McGowan does. I don't think
Henry Winkler does.
No, and that Henry Winkler's giving us another Drew Barrymore. It's another, like, holy shit, we're seeing the icon out of water. Yeah. And I think you're supposed to have this moment of kind of cognitive dissonance where, like, is this turning into the adults hate the children? That goes away really quickly. But, like,
one of the things that I read that's really interesting is that his death was actually added later to pad the time when they realized that there weren't enough deaths. So exactly, it's something that was elevated over time.
Yeah, I think there's even a little bit of moment where you can see it being Gale. Yes. Kind of a failing actor or a failing journalist who needs more juice.
But I just never buy Dewey.
Probably.
Yeah, Dewey is the one who I think. But then again, because it's Scream and because Scream constantly sets up its rules and subverts them, there is a moment late in the film where you're thinking to yourself, I don't know, man, maybe it is Dewey. Maybe I've been dumb this whole time for thinking that it isn't the little fucking weirdo with the mustache.
That's like the best picture of him ever, guys.
I know.
I love him.
And, not that we're going over them too, but it's really genuinely one of the things that I think makes scary movies so masterful is that something that I really felt on this rewatch is if you scaled Gale a little bit older and you scaled Dewey a little bit younger, it changes so much about their dynamic. His naivete, her jadedness, and I really feel like the casting of Courtney and David brought these characters to a very different center where I don't think that we as quickly question if Gale is using Dewey, and I think that we do see that there are genuine feelings there, and I think that red herring and potential being reflected in Scary Movie as that reveal, that elevates that movie in a way that they couldn't have expected to be able to elevate their own parody.
Well, it's funny because Scary Movie is kind of really important to the whole conversation because Scream is not really a postmodern film. Scream isn't doing pastiche. Scream is doing satire. Scream is pulling all of the conventions of the genre and dissecting them and seeing how they can be remixed and redone, but it is not giving you just the highlights. It is not doing what Scary Movie ultimately does, which is taking tropes from every movie that came out in the 90s and fusing them into a single film or a series of films. And I think people like to look at especially the B movies of this time, which would be like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend, and say like,
can we please just agree that I Know What You Did Last Summer is like a B plus A minus?
No, I mean, like I love them, but I'm talking about like the percent. We see Scream as like this kind of flagship, and then the other ones as like they don't really matter as long as you see Scream.
Power Rangers to their VR Troopers, Superhuman Samurai. We operate out of a pizza shop. Range
Exactly. And I think no matter what, those movies are all fully invested in being what they are. They're not trying to pull a lot of tropes for the sake of giving you the kind of idealized form of a film or the most sanitized version of it. What's really great is that the Scary Movie films do that with a little bit of comedy and a promise that they are trying to be as silly and accessible as possible. I think even like the urban legends are trying to give you something really pretty solid and different.
Yeah.
And I think, Scream is the most successful because it has the best writer, producer, director combo. But I don't think the other ones aren't successful. I think they are successful specifically because they paid attention to the formula and did the same thing their own way. But it is all about coming up with your own rules and really playing around with how they work.
And I think one of the things we see the most throughout the Scream franchise that's highlighted here so excellently is the subversion of expectation by playing against what we understand. There's a lot of points at which Ghostface just gets kicked in the fucking face and gets his dick stapled, and like somebody just chews off one of his toes. And the next nude scene, no staples, no missing toes, no face bruises. And you've just kind of got to be like, how? Right?
It's Wile E. Coyote levels of recovery. Yeah.
Yes. And we come to understand frequently throughout the Scream franchise, it's, dual killers, right? And I appreciate the multiplicity of complicity in murder, right? But one of the things that we wind up with is I still think that too often the ghost faces are a little almost supernatural. And I think what I'm going to just start saying is they're training really hard. They're, taking a whole lot of HGH. And the nights that we see, they're just coked out of their minds.
Yeah.
And, ready to go. Because this movie does have a couple of, after the fight Tatum puts up, Billy's dick should hurt way too much to fuck Sydney. Not that Nev Campbell and, of course, her incredibly hot brother aren't lookers. But and speaking of lookers, they're looking right at me right here. Their gang's on
Great
PTP.
Buffy reference story.
But Tatum over here is a really great example, I think, of where so much of this film, just really does play against the expected behaviors.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that they just decided we're just going with because this is just how the world works here. I mean, the fact of the matter is every victim who lives should be dead too. With all of the wounds Sydney and Gail have had, they shouldn't be able to survive. So like everybody has a form of it's equal throughout, but I do think it's really fascinating that, like I said, the killer just is fine to jump through glass. The killer is fine to take some really bad head traumas, kicks, stabs, and just not be showing. And I sort of wondered when we got to 3, which got very hammy, if they were going to be like, And this whole time, all of the killers were taking this special drug that we're now mentioning for the first time.
Everybody's taking ghost face.
Right. That makes you more invulnerable to, which is absolutely something that would have come up in Scream 3, the way that it kind of retcons and re-examines the whole franchise. But no, it is just ghost faces are resilient.
Yeah.
And I think part of the layer that we sometimes forget is how much these are the pinnacle moment. Like, as a guy who loves opera, these are the moment of the opera. It's not that the operatic creature exists in that perfect extremeness every time. It's that they reach that climax, that apex. And there's a lot to be said for the power of the apex, especially when you're living in a sort of meta-involved world. Part of what makes the Scream universe so interesting is the characters not only are aware they're in this movie, the universe reacts around this movie. And one of the Scream staples is the staircase tumble with an open wound.
Yeah.
I've had an open wound. I can barely move. I have tumbled down the stairs, and I've been sure I'm dead.
Nico, how's your arm?
Oh my god, I think the burn grew. It's insane, and so like it's spreading.
It's not very big, but stairs.
Right, and so that's where I'm at with these. Sometimes, like the stair tumble, come on, it's a little much. We gotta rein it in a little bit, but I just have so many positive things I could say about these films. And really, whether it's that they set up the red right hand theme or it's this end sequence, I really love what we get, even when it's the silliness of us tumbling down the stairs with an open wound.
Let me ask you this. Do you guys remember Ghostface masks before Scream?
I think I remember something, if not the ghost face mask, something very similar.
I had a ghost face mask before Scream. The ghost face mask to me is one of the most fascinating parts, because I remember in the couple years prior to that, they were like a big seller. They were a fun thing. It was a really good way to do like an older kid's, like if you're 10 and you're like, I want to be a little bit scary. But I don't, I don't really necessarily have a big budget but I don't want to do like a kid's costume.
The eyes are sympathetic.
Yeah.
There's a humanity to the face.
And so I just distinctly remember I had a ghost. I went, it was either 4th grade or 5th grade. I had a ghost face mask for my Halloween costume, and like a whole like ghost look. And it was just a great mask. And the way that it has sort of taken off as its own, iconic product, I think is just really cool.
And it's funny, when they were in production, that was the mask they found. It was the mask they liked. It was the mask they went with. They didn't want to license it for the cost originally.
Yep.
And did a bunch of mock-ups. Didn't end up liking any of them, and were ultimately going to do one that was like the original and just with minor alterations. And then once the producers really fell behind the movie and were in favor of it, they licensed the mask. And so like it really, really, really had been important almost since the beginning, almost by accident. And the way that they ended up getting it, it's almost like it's this weird fate thing that it became part of that thing that had already been growing.
Yeah.
And it's ultimately, okay, there's a million things that kind of hold Scream the TV show back, but those first 2 seasons not having Ghostface and instead having their own version of the Ghostface mask, not the best. No. Makes it a little tough because it's already like wrong. So not that it's bad, it's just not Scream. It should have been called like Shout with Fear or something. I do want to bring up a couple of principal characters that are pretty significant to just kind of hot or not. You know what I mean? I want to hot up real quick. I give a big hot to Sid. I give a kind of a big not to Tatum, who I think ultimately, I love the character and I love the performance. But I actually think she's kind of a horrible monster. The stuff she says to Sid is nightmarish. It's the worst thing they've seen since, referring to Sid's mother's massacred body. Well, it's bad. Like,
Had
it's
they
so callous.
had they been able to get the actress they wanted to get, had she not been unfortunately underage at the time, it would have been an unbelievably different performance of Tatum, and it probably would have gone something more like, please don't kill me, Mr. Killaman. I want to be in the sequel.
Natasha Lyonne
Was wanted for Tatum, and yeah, I really feel like you can see Natasha Lyonne's performance in what Rose McGowan does, and you can see where perhaps that type of jaded performance from Natasha Lyonne probably would have been a little bit better than Rose McGowan's.
What I really have to wonder is, I love the idea of Natasha Lyonne because she would have. What is she doing in this city in Woodsboro, California? How is she there with her Natasha Lyonne in a great way? I can see that working really well. But that was my first.
Still sounds like this. Oh no.
That was my first question when Kirby pops on screen in 4. What is this girl doing here? This girl does not belong with these people. In a really good way. Like this character is special because she is not supposed to be here. Her parent, like her dad is in the military and they had to transfer. She is not supposed to be at this school, and that could have been
never would have died.
That could have been a really interesting reference had she been the Natasha Lyonne in that role of it's the Clerks thing. I'm not even supposed to be here today. I'm not supposed to be in this movie. That could have been really cool. Tatum is everything that has been said is correct. It works in the zeitgeist of the 90s because Rose McGowan goes on to do Jawbreaker, which I literally just watched last night, kind of for this exact reason. That's the same character given the full room to breathe with Rose McGowan playing her. The character, Courtney, the character that she plays in Jawbreaker. They are basically the same character because Rose McGowan is so Rose McGowan. You can't, Paige?
Yeah, about to say, I was going to defend Paige.
Yeah. Paige is that same character.
It's my turning point. It's where I have to leave Charmed. But yeah, she's on screen with Alyssa Milano. She's never the worst actress.
Exactly. It's whatever the shades are how evil she is, but no matter what, it's always the exact same character. And she is that girl in that era. I think that's really cool. I love her for it. I'm really sad that she went on to just not be in a good place, and I want to believe that what it is that the abuse she suffered in Hollywood just made her not quite right in the head. I don't want that to be what happened to her. I just don't want her to be a TERF, and apparently she is. Yeah. So I would like to believe
that track she did with BT.
The track that she did with BT bangs. Nico and I will talk about this. Take this to our graves. It really is good. She's basically rapping, but whatever.
So you hot her.
I hot her. I really do. I hot her as that girl in that moment. But Kevo made the most important point, which is that it probably just should have been somebody else.
And so on that subject, if we move who are we moving hot to next? Because I have one. Well, and here's the thing. How would we have felt about the preferred Billy, who was Vince Vaughn? Skeet was a coincidence.
No,
his girlfriend auditioned for the film, and the casting director pulled him in when he was picking up his girlfriend and was like, "Come audition." I agree completely.
Vince is fully an adult in Swingers, which is the same year. So no.
I remember when I saw Swingers, which I could have sworn was 2 years before this, but I believe you. You're totally right. I was about to make the joke of, Vince Vaughn was 45 when he was in Swingers in 1994.
Yeah.
So, bizarre.
I'm not hot or not Billy and Stu.
Yeah.
Not Billy. I don't know. I kind of love Matthew Lillard.
Matthew Lillard is perfect. Matthew Lillard is a beautiful, sexy creature. I hot both of them, and I hot them together.
Oh, yeah. Together, they are unstoppable.
Yeah. really biggest waste of Riverdale was not getting Matthew Lillard on there and having him and Skeet Ulrich kiss. That could have been just, Jughead's dad. He's not gay, but there's just one guy out there that it's okay for him to kiss.
You know what? And I really mostly agree with everything you're saying. And the only thing that keeps me from really hotting Billy is a testament to Skeet Ulrich's performance. Like, I find him too horrifically skeezy, and he worked really hard to be horrifically skeezy. Zoinks
I didn't
says
kill
Skeet-
anybody.
Yeah, he really worked hard at that serial killer vibe. When production started, he didn't get that there was supposed to be comedy to it, so he was annoyed at Matthew Lillard and Jamie Kennedy because he wasn't sure why they weren't playing it as straight as he was. But like, apparently, he did get the vibe over time. But yeah, he played it with a really good intensity, and I find it so jarring. But no, he's hot.
This was his year to be a sleazebag because this is The Craft too.
Yeah.
That's
And I keep
so
going to
crazy.
say that-
And then the two of them.
I keep going to say that like Tatum is like the blondie of Fairuza Balk's white chocolate brownie in this era. They're like the same very sickly sweet kind of dessert that's like a little too and like right here.
You thought you were lacing them with weed, but instead it's actually just
Angel
like,
dust.
yeah.
I never thought about how this is one of the Craft Coven girls working with one of the Charm Coven girls. That's so funny.
Yep.
Are you even gonna rate? Are you even gonna rate Randy? By the way,
honestly, I'm giving him.
I want to. Can I just introduce it?
Go for it.
Randy Knott, but having nothing to do with Jamie Kennedy, who's a very talented producer. Hot every single other member of the entire Meeks family from here to the end of the franchise. I love every.
We're not there yet. We're not there
No,
yet. We're gonna talk about
Heather Meeks.
We're gonna talk about Heather in a minute. I'm giving Randy a hot because this was a guy in all high schools in the second half of the 90s.
Brian. I had a Brian. His name was Brian. Yep.
They could go a lot of ways. A Xander is one way it could go, and I would give Xander a not hot. They rescued Randy by not going too far with the him being into Sid stuff, and then it's gone in movie 2.
Yeah.
And actually, he makes one reference to it. He says, "Who are you talking to? Randy Meeks, the unrequited love slave of Sidney Prescott?" It's he makes fun of himself is the only reference to it.
Yeah. But yeah, this was a guy, and I think when girls gave him the time of day, he really showed up a lot of the time. A lot of these guys did not turn into incels for our generation, and I salute them. A lot of them did. A lot of them were Xanders. A lot of them were nobody likes me, so I'm going to cry about it until somebody likes me, and that was lame. But Randy does great, and we'll talk more about it as we get into 2.
The preferred castings on this one were Seth Green, Jason Lee, and Breckin Meyer.
I would have taken 2 of those.
I can't think about Breckenmeyer on camera or it's going to knock my microphone out of place.
Yeah, I know. That's the one I would have taken, but then it would have been like, why isn't Sydney dating him? Oh, it's because he's short.
Yeah.
Girl,
it would have been a whole commentary on how short men don't deserve love.
Grow up, 90s girls. We're over that by now.
Oh my god, yeah. Breckenmeyer is like an 11 out of 10 on every scale.
Yeah, he's perfect.
Oh, it's amazing. I do just want to say there's a couple of other amazing performances in this movie that sadly don't make this board just because they're not in this scene. Henry Winkler, really, he touches kids too much, like physically, not like inappropriately, but the character physically touches his students. Skeeves me out as an educator. But it is such a great performance from Henry Winkler. It's my second favorite Henry Winkler performance ever, whose name is so hard to say if you have a speech impediment, evidently. The Arrested Development performance is
It's wild how many performances of his I like beyond Fonzie, and like that's really good for him.
Yeah.
For that having been something he was known so much for 40 to 50 years ago, that our generation has these other performances of him to go by.
Agreed.
Because I never bought into the Fonz is cool. Like, not like saying I thought the Fonz was uncool, but there's something about he beats up jukeboxes. That doesn't make him fucking cool. Go get a fucking instruction manual and fix it. Like,
We could do a whole broadcast about Happy Days, my man.
I really could. But then I just have to go out to a field and sit on it. So that's what
Bottom.
that's Marion's insult.
You're not a bottom. I'm kidding.
So
who else are we rating?
There's no
Fonz.
We're done.
The Fonz.
Not the adults.
Sydney's dad is not. None of the parents are hot. Gail and Dewey are hot.
I also want to just kind of say there's a couple of other little background things, like Kenny the cameraman, who comes, the cameraman. He's evidently from the Downton cameraman studio. He does kind of fit a trope that would go on to be throughout this whole franchise of incidental bystanders who get caught in the crossfire. It's really tough because you don't get a chance to really know a lot of these characters, especially by Scream 3, which puts in the least amount of development into its kills. It's a little bummery, but I think that just about everybody, the sheriff puts in a really great performance here. The one thing I do want to highlight is that fucking kitchen scene. I could talk about it all day because it's the moment that makes this franchise eternal. Yes, it's a very good movie throughout, but would we feel the same way if it didn't have Sid saying, I call the cops on you stupid assholes. You know what I mean? Like, if it didn't have that moment, if we didn't see our hero triumph over the evil, and not just by triumphing over it, by triumphing over it within the context of this universe. I'm going to just make the parallel for a second. There's a scene in Glee where Santana performs Don't Rain on My Parade in front of Rachel, and we're like 10 seconds into it and I start sobbing, and Kevin was like, I'm so glad you're enjoying it. And I'm like,
I like this a lot too. What? I feel like you're seeing something I'm not.
It is literally that Naya Rivera's direction and choreography is using all of the best moments of Lea Michele throughout the series, to the point where I'm literally miming it before it's happening because I know what she would do to hurt Rachel. Not because I'm a genius, because I had just watched the whole show and it was laid out in front of me perfectly. There is something about when a character is able to surrender to the conventions of genre and trope that suspend this world together. And the way we see Sid triumph over her captors, triumph over her would-be murderers, not by murdering them, but by defending her life and those she loves. It's a powerful transformation of the horror and fear that is so pervasive throughout this franchise, and it's what makes her a hero, not another murderer.
Something we talked about when we watched this week was the opening shot of her and the way that she's dressed and the way that her room is dressed with the stuffed animals.
And that novel on Boss.
We are immediately given this impression of her being this young, naive, innocent, helpless young woman. And then the first call that she gets from Ghostface, she doesn't really take it. She's afraid, which is reasonable. But she is immediately challenging, and she steps out of the house and she challenges him to come get her, essentially. And, I compared it to the transformation. Yes, I compared it to the transformation from Veronica Mars pre-show to the Veronica Mars we meet at the beginning of the show, where she's this jaded, bitter young girl, young woman. And originally she had been very naive, very gullible. And it's a little bit too much of a transformation. But like you said, it's Sydney surrendering to the conventions that have taken control of her life in the ways that she needs to. She doesn't become some sort of supernatural, psychic Matrix type person by being able to predict the conventions, but she puts on that robe to scare them, and she uses their voice recorder, and she calls the police smartly, but she knows in the time that she has to fill, she needs to fight them, and she's prepared to do it. And it so subverts everything that they set you up to believe about this young woman, and it's really cool to watch.
TK, what is your take on these killers? Had you, I'm asking you to remember back, to when you were just a young TK.
It's almost 30 years. Let's be real. It's 27 years.
I was going to be really silly and make like a 3 or 4 years ago joke, but okay.
Hey, little baby.
I remember watching this as a kid. I was convinced for no reason that the killer was no one we knew, like as a kid. So when it was two people that I just watched one of them die, and I've kind of always had a crush on Matthew Lillard. He's kind of dopey and tall, and I just maybe root for dopey tall guys. And so, I don't know. Did anybody else, TK, please first, but did anybody else have other guesses, I guess, 62 years ago when this first came out?
I don't remember. I definitely, Henry Winkler was high on my list for a big chunk. By the time we get to this, no. By the time we get
already dead, I agree.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. I guess, I do remember corn syrup. I do remember distinctly being like, okay, I was wrong. It's not Billy. And that was the great, oh God, yeah, look at him suck on them fingers, you whore. This was the Scream thing of you had sex, now you have to die. Oops, I guess it's true because he's dead. Oops, he's not dead. Oh, he's actually the killer. This was what Scream did so well, which is keep in seconds flipping the script over and over again. So I thought it was Billy for a really long time. And I think I really didn't think it was him for 2 seconds. I don't think I had time to reassess and think about who I guess I thought it was between the moment where I'm like, well, I guess it can't be him, he's dead, and realizing, oh no, he's actually not dead and is the killer.
Doing the Roman. Yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing I do remember is having that moment of being like, well, it's Billy. Oh, I guess I was wrong. It's not Billy. He's dead. But I really think ultimately I didn't have time to figure out who it was. And that was just one of the ways that this movie kept you on your toes.
I appreciate Jonah's guess here, Gail, the angle with Sydney's mom.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of other ones like that. I said the sheriff earlier, I think, was a pretty decent red herring.
I just want to say that one of the things that this is so important for in my development as a storyteller is coming to understand that the character was putting on a performance that is a layer on top of the actor's performance. So much of what we saw Billy and Stu be throughout this film is a nuanced layering of multiple iterations of themselves. There's times where it's Billy putting on the performance. There's times he's kind of maybe a little snapping, but ultimately the rawness that you get once the stabbing in the kitchen begins. I understand that Skeet Ulrich is unlikely to win an Oscar in the next 10 years. That's just not the trajectory his career has taken. But the complexity that he and Matthew Lillard put, and Matthew Lillard gets all the kudos he needs thanks to that unforgettable Twin Peaks scene. My God, he recently gave an interview where he's like, that's going to literally follow me into hell. It's one of the scariest things ever committed to film. And I so truly love the rawness we get here. It never goes away. It is one of the most perfect things about Scream. And I give this movie an A. Out of 100, I give it a 98. It really holds up. The things that don't hold up, you could still fucking build a house on. And I am so proud of how this movie has aged as a kid who would have set himself on fire for it.
Yep, I agree with all that. I'll also say I feel like there are two wolves inside me, and they are Billy and Stu.
That's so hot.
Like those are the two halves of my personality, I think. Also, I randomly had a really fun night in Florence, Italy with Matthew Lillard's cousin, and I think about that all the time.
Is it Liliana
Fun.
Lillard?
No, God, no. That would be horrible.
I would love it. I feel like if I have two wolves inside me, they're probably Sydney and Randy.
Those are good wolves.
They're not bad wolves. They're not.
Those are very powerful wolves.
My wolves are Sydney and the ghost face mask, so we got problems.
I was gonna say, I think yours are Tatum and Dewey, so in a nice way. I want to love Dewey in this more than I feel like he is given a fair shake. I feel like he's played a little bit too doofy. I feel like he's played a little bit too close to the way he ends up coming out in Scary Movie, which is weird. But, you know.
Ultimately, Keva, what do you give this movie? Does it hold up for you? You a little shaky on it?
I don't know. I wasn't prepared to grade it. We didn't say we were grading them, so
well, then I'm gonna jump us forward a year, and you can get your grade ready when your grade is ready. Grades can take a minute, right? What could not take a minute was the rushed production into Scream 2. Not that I think the script lacks for quality, but there are moments that I feel you can see would be considered differently. I often reflect back on a quote that I remember Tori Amos saying. And she said that when she wrote Little Earthquakes, she'd had a couple of years to pick out her favorite pieces of music she'd ever written and shape them into one solid body of work that just fucks so good. And I forget the name of the gentleman who created The Sopranos, says the same thing of the first season of The Sopranos. But the second season of The Sopranos, much like the second album from Tori Amos, Under the Pink, were created a little bit more under the gun. And while certainly there are hits across both, it's not always the same cohesive thought. Outside of those dings, having rewatched Scream 2, or as we come to affectionately call the sequels, 2 Cream, having watched 2 Cream a few times lately, this movie holds up at a really good place in my heart. The complaints I have are not enough Omar Epps. You put Omar Epps in a bathroom and don't do more with it. That's a waste. And Jerry O'Connell, this is peak Jerry O'Connell at his most peak perfectionist. And I'm so excited to start talking about this movie.
I think
I need to say first, I did not sanction 2 Cream, and I am not calling it that. Continue.
I think I'm amused enough by it that I'm letting it slide.
Yes.
I think starting off
I just
with
needed it on the record. That's all.
yeah, absolutely. I think starting off with the grade, going back to the grading, if Scream is a 98 and, we start at a possible out of 100 for Scream 2, we do have to start by taking a chunk off for the script. So this is not going to be an A movie. We might, by the end of things, be at A minus B plus, but we are already below 98. We're at 95 to 92.
92.
For not even the plot, but for the dialogue. And I'm going to kind of lump in script and casting choices.
And the pacing on the language, just like specifically the pacing, the scenes do not have the same pattern.
No. Because they are trying to give us the best of what we got from the previous movie while also putting it in a new setting, because it can't be the next year of high school and we do the same thing over again. But college is different than high school. So you don't try and give us the same scenes. And the points at which they do are some of the weaker ones. It's also, I think Elise Neal is really done dirty by this franchise. But so we're moving.
Hallie?
That's Hallie. Yeah,
Hallie is such a great character.
Her best friend who is replacing Tatum. So
what? Her who? Yeah.
This is. I appreciate that we are not seeing a cast of just white people, which we did in Scream 1. I do not love and then again, same thing. I know what you did last summer. In both cases, we move up 2 years, we evolve, we realize it's ridiculous to just have white people. But what do we get? The poorly written black best friend who has little to no agency, who does not get to participate in the heroics. Brandy gets a little bit of a better deal, but compared to what Sarah Michelle Gellar got and what Rose McGowan got in the original films, Brandy and Elise Neal really don't get their just desserts.
And just,
Jada,
if I
sorry,
could
go ahead.
capitalize on that for one
Yeah,
second.
please.
When we're talking about I hate that it's coming up so much this episode as an educator. When we're talking about as I would assume anybody who's going to this college from based on the sort of image they've created of this college, sort of elite students looking for that sort of competitive 90s edge, right? A student like this would be looking at a more prestigious HBCU, or she would be should be a member of one of the black sororities, so that she is this loving, caring black woman who has in many ways sort of accepted that Sid, her best friend's life is going to always be so complicated that she has to be extra careful and show extra concern and be aware of Sid's trigger warnings. This is a woman who actually, by definition of the role she plays, takes on so much responsibility for someone else, just to sort of have it dismissed into this world of whiteness that feels very much like a Northeastern sort of New England university. This just does not do this character or this actress the justice that she richly deserves for the performance she gives.
If you take everything that you said up to dismissed, like, it's not my favorite thing for a black character to get, but we're also in the 90s, so whatever. Like, let's assume, okay, everything up to that. And instead of just being kind of pushed into the background as the movie goes on, like I said, she becomes part of the heroics. She is, because she knows Sid can't be strong, because Sid is 2 years post the most horrifyingly traumatic thing that could possibly happen to her.
After
She's
the
strong.
previous traumatic thing where her mom was murdered by the man that her mom was under her expectation sexually assaulted by.
So in this movie, what if she's the strong? What if Hallie is the strong one? Physically, mentally, what if she is the one that slaps Gail when Gail tries to get too close to Sid? What if she pushes Cotton away and says, "Don't touch her"? What if she comes in and like jumps Debbie? There were so many options instead of just kind of she disappears when things get really good. So it's a bummer part of the movie. Great actor, I think, and I would have liked to have seen her in 3.
I wonder if there was supposed to be more hammering the idea of she was a suspect, but that's really not anything that ever comes across. And so, like, where she is ultimately killed, there could have been a reveal that had been faked. That's like, because the second time we got through, too, again, that whole sequence goes on for way too long. The car crash, climbing out of the car. And I noted again, they're standing like 40 feet apart when Hallie's killed. And now I'm realizing the only justification for that would be if we were supposed to, at any point in time, believe that she had been a red herring. But it's never hit very hard. She never gives us a suspicious vibe. They don't mention her again, really, after the last time we see her. It's such a misuse of a character on every level. She's not even a good red herring, let alone a good friend or a good hero of the story. So everything about her death is just prolonged and unjustified and weird.
And speaking of prolonged, unjustified, and kind of weird, Kevo, you had made a really excellent comparison that each one of the Scream movies feels like it has a coming of age or genre film attached and sort of seeded throughout. And I would agree with your said at the time, maybe you've, changed your mind a little bit, but one of your points was that the college sorority fraternity film that sort of fused into 2 is the weakest of the fusions. In the first one, it's sort of like a high school house party film. In the third one, it's sort of a detective drama, which it kind of does really well in a, think something Morgan Freeman would have made in the 90s. It does its job.
Meta Hollywood pastiche.
Yeah. Beyond the fact that this is the most beautiful any man should have ever looked on the planet. Jerry O'Connell does not make a great red herring. He feels a little too dopey silly in the movie after the killer was the boyfriend for it to be him. So when they try to make it him, it's just because he's beautiful and her boyfriend. There's no other compelling reason. Jerry O'Connell, though, not the criminal miscast that we're going to talk about. So many wasted actors in 4. Having just rewatched them, I think 4 is better than 3 by like a small mile. But man, this is the start of the, I think you really could have used that significant actor in a bigger capacity, because honestly, so much of Derek lifts out of this film.
I will say, though, he is a part of the tradition of Scream will flip on itself really quickly. So you really are set up to not think it's him until you start thinking it's him, until you start thinking that that's absurd because it would be so bad. And it is a constant back and forth of this movie keeping you on shaky ground. And I think the fact that we have Timothy Olyphant, also a super beautiful man who's giving us not Stu vibes until he breaks character and starts giving us very much Stu vibes. I do think that there is a way in which it works. I think Jerry O'Connell's writing isn't any good. I think it's sort of like Riley is a great idea for a character on Buffy because he is the anti-Xander, he's the anti-Xander for sure, but he's the anti-Angel.
Anti-Angel, yeah.
But his writing is yeah. Riley's writing is always so bad that you just never really care. Like, even though conceptually I'm like exactly the right person to be in this role at this time for Buffy, you still actually have to have a good role. And similarly here, this is exactly the guy that you would expect Sid to end up with, again, post-trauma.
I just want to real quick compliment your guys' parallel. That makes a really great point. I guess I'd never seen it as Angel as if you started with Batman and Riley provides the supplemental Superman as the comparative sort of like, but he's the Boy Scout. And I guess I just never compared it that way. Thank you guys.
Yeah, but I mean, your point still stands. It's a bad use of the actor. It's a great role placement, and it could work. But again, the script is not the most solid, so ultimately, it just doesn't work.
I really loved to your point as well, though, about how they really played your expectations and they kept you guessing, because I really feel like that shows, especially in the scene where Sydney doesn't know what to do. Excuse me. And one of the things that I love most of that scene is that she never really fully turns on him. She never really fully believes it. She's stuck in the paralysis of that moment, much like they want the audience to be, until they do finally reveal what the answer is. But she never fully is sure if she can believe it, much like they want the audience to never fully be sure, would they do that again?
Right, because you as the audience member, if you're wrong, if it turns out that you just dismissed this guy because you thought, it's like the SAT question, if you're like, well, there were just 4 C's in a row, so this next one isn't going to be C. If you do that, rather than taking the time to really think and look at all the evidence in front of you and determine if this could really be the guy, you're the dummy that deserves to be killed. But the problem is, you don't have the time to do that. You're in the middle of a very tense situation trying to figure this movie out. So, like, it structurally can work. Just the character deserved better writing. And even though I think I Love You in the cafeteria is cute, it's just not enough to get us there. I do want to circle back to Jada Pinkett for just a second. Very interesting spin on the Drew Barrymore first kill. In this case, this is not a person who we watched as a child, who was already a part of an iconic horror franchise that we then
definitely watched as a child.
Who?
Different World.
No. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
So no one understands, but as a 5-year-old boy, yes, I had to have glasses, and so my only requirement, I was not weird about it. I said to my parents, "I have no problem getting glasses. I have one requirement: I have to have Dwayne Wayne glasses."
I
And my
wanted those
parents,
two, actually. Beth said no.
and my parents were like, great. And I famously, as a child, had a musical performance that I would do with my microphone. I would start with Melissa Manchester's, God, guys, I would start with Melissa Manchester's Somewhere Over the Rainbow and Gypsy in My Soul. And then I would go into my Myrtle Urkel impression, and I would end it with 5 minutes as Whitley Gilbert. So Different World was a big part of me.
We would have been very good friends.
Yeah.
You know, at this point, she's had a large career and a very black career. A career that, like, you know, I didn't mention A Different World because, like, I've actually seen a bunch of A Different World, but that's not the first thing I associate her with. But, like, she had just been in Set It Off. She's about to be in Woo, which, you know, another really, I think for a lot of people, really iconic movie. You know, she is pulling together a really big career. So to have her do this shift to a genre she's not associated with.
Truly. Truly.
And, you know, to have it be next level sort of iconic, where she climbs up onto the screen in front of everybody and just screams, which I think, you know, for a movie called Scream, that first scream, which is actually just her mom, which is actually Drew Barrymore's mom, or the character's mom, is kind of lame. It's, you know, we never get the scream from Drew Barrymore.
Because her throat is slashed, so she can just barely.
Exactly. But here we go back to what the point of this was, and we get in front of the audience, in front of all of us that are here freaking out over Scream 2 or Stab 1, whatever we're seeing. There's Jada giving us the scream that we have deserved since movie 1. I think it's really iconic. I think it's super cool. I think for me, this is also this intro is an A. I think Drew's is an A, but I think this is the best possible way you could have taken the elements that you think are important to what makes a Scream movie and arrange them into something that is equally important and speaks to the essence of why we have the scene in the movie, but is its own thing.
I really feel a lot of what you're saying, but I find both the actor and character kind of too unlikable to feel that this is the A it should be. A character that you find unlikable dying really horrifically, and seeing it like that really does and making you feel for them anyway. It's still a really cool and beautiful artistic thing, but like it's not quite as sympathetic as if it had been someone who I wasn't like, you just take your boyfriend and stole his money. That sucks.
Kevo, can you quickly make a GIF of that so that when we're talking about Jenny McCarthy's character in the third one, you can just play that GIF where it sums up all of my feelings perfectly?
Yeah, there are a lot of other things about Jenny McCarthy's character in that movie too, though, because like this is supposed to be a fresh character. This is supposed to be someone who's making an immediate fresh impression on you at the beginning of this film, and it's a sour one.
I really love Jada Pinkett in this, actually. Kind of yell at me, mommy, a little bit. She's so fucking hot in this movie. It's stupid. But I love this opening. I think it's great. For those who don't know, the brand name for bathroom dividers is Heine Hiders. And I believe that the manufacturer of Heine Hiders, who have 80% of the bathroom market dividers around the world, right, would certainly argue that in her 40s, osteoporotic, I don't know how to say osteoporosis as an adjective, woman, or Mickey, who is so hot and, 1000% could
even Mickey.
Yeah. Not a
you
chance.
You can't puncture one of those things.
Nope. I have a feeling my father, the maker of Heine Hiders.
According to one wiki, which there's no definitive thing here, except for the word of one producer, Mickey does all of them except Randy. I don't think that's correct.
Wow, I could see it.
I could see it, but I don't think it's correct.
the fact that she facilitates so much of it and enjoys it so much. And God, Kevo, can you please get up that image of her where she is, she is
Oh, skulking.
the
Oh
skull.
yeah, this was and
Every
well, yeah.
time this is amazing.
I pulled this specifically because Kevo got 98% of our images. I did not even go through the other films. I just, guys, if you haven't watched it yet, you need to watch our was it our villains?
Oh
What was
I'll
the
bring it up.
bracket? There's a bracket where
bracket.
it's Debbie Salt versus somebody else, and Debbie Salt lost.
I'll bring
And
it up.
I was
Debbie Salt
horrified.
versus
Yeah, it was horror
Bob.
villains.
It's like not like she lost to like a mystical concept. And
Yeah, exactly. But I love Debbie very much because Laurie Metcalf, who just another icon of the '90s. Again, a thing that screamed that this is Henry Winkler in the first one. Like, this is just an icon of the times being in a Scream movie, which is thank you. So Villain Showdown bracketeering.
that is some of the most fun.
And I will pop
had
that in
with
the.
you guys
I
on air.
will.
That was
I
a
will
lot.
pop that in the comments in a second.
We
and
did
she
have an
was one of
absolute
the-
blast with this. She was a finalist.
and with good reason.
With
'cause
absolutely good reason.
She's nuts.
This is her.
And-
But that first moment, that is your best foreshadow. That is the movie telling you exactly what's happening. It's too little for you, the audience member, to get it. But this is not who she is. Literally 2 seconds later, when she pulls up behind Gail and approaches her to say that she loves her and she's emulating her career. This woman here is staring death into her eyes because she is the villain of the film. But you will not get this until like view 3. It's just such a quick scene. It is literally less than 2 seconds worth of footage, and then she's Debbie Salt. But this is one of the ways the movie gets such huge marks. And then we get this woman throughout. Like, there are a few other things where you're like, she seems a little put upon about the situation. Do I suspect her? And then Kevo, I've got one more I think where she's in the blue suit.
Like this one.
This is the moment where Gail yells at her to fuck off, and she's like, "You're right. That was too much too soon." And she backs away, and you go, "Oh, I was completely wrong. This is just a reporter who's a doof." It's good. It's good.
And
Tori brings up that she honestly thought Debbie was killing to become the new Gail, did not realize she was Billy's mom. Because the thing is, even if you do suspect that she is somehow involved, and
That's a better motive.
Yeah, but then the absolute twist, it is
Yep.
one of Nico's favorite lines.
this is
60 pounds and
It's okay, because here's the thing. I religiously watched Party of Five. I was a young, emotionally charged ingenue who played violin outside. And so I had a lot of Claudia feels. And my older sister, Julia, was the light of my life. And so I hung on to every word Nev Campbell said.
I was the
Party of
Jeep.
Five. Did you just say you were the Jeep?
I was the Jeep.
Good.
I was the family Jeep.
I love you so much. No, you're Bailey. And so, yeah.
I'm drunk.
So, I love every performance Nev Campbell gives, but there's this moment of brutal honesty when Tori says Nico sat by a lot of sad wells as a boy. She has no idea how correct that is. When she goes, Mrs. Loomis, it is literally her channeling this moment of realism that almost doesn't belong in this film. That is the only way she can rectify reality at this point. It is the quality of when a moment of fiction that is meant to be a shock is so good, it deforms reality. I'm very lucky that I have never been truly betrayed on a level where, like, I walked in and found out that my parents were Russian agents. Like, it's never happened, you know? But it's that level of betrayal in her voice. There is a moment of true honesty in her performance. It's one of my favorite lines
I
in
mean,
all of fiction, truly.
forget being involved in this. She never thought she would see this woman again, probably. Why would she think? She disappeared ages before Billy even died. I
M-
can't assume she at all came up in the aftermath. Otherwise, people would have known what she looked like. But yeah, it's a surreal moment that is so humanizing to the character.
Yes.
My preferred line is the follow-up that I almost quoted over you when this started, which is, this is 60 pounds and a lot of work later.
That's just so many moms I knew. So like,
It's called a makeover. You should try it, Gail. You're looking a little tired.
now I need to say one other thing. This is literally directly responsible for my single favorite moment in writing history. Desperate Housewives season 3 Bang is the absolute height of television excellence for me. This is a complicated arc where Carolyn Bigsby is a little nosy about something going on Wisteria Lane, and as a result gets herself pulled into the drama of Wisteria Lane. Carolyn Bigsby would have been a normal woman if she had not been pulled into the drama of Wisteria Lane. And she just unhinges, and it is the most emotionally powerful. I mean, it was such a hit for ABC. They canceled reruns of other shows and reran this 3 times that week and called it
Yes.
encore airings.
Yep.
It was nuts. Most successful the show's ever been creatively, written by a guy whose work on Frasier I worshipped, Joe Keenan. But it was the vision of Mark Cherry who said, Scream is so good, it inspires me to see the ways elements of this could exist within my suburban satire. And God, this performance is so good. She continues to dine on this. And I just cannot get over how much this moment shaped so much fiction I love for the rest of my life. Thank you for the Desperate diatribe. I really appreciate it. We'll never cover the 8 seasons of Desperate Housewives, I promise. But my God, that's as close as we're going to get.
But I mean, like, it does speak to the fact that Scream wanted to do more than just, we already knew it's not giving us a Jason or a Michael Myers.
No, it's giving us Lady Cassandra in the worst performance of Troy I've ever
Oh my God.
seen.
Sydney's career situation is maybe the biggest horror story in the franchise.
I just want to say that the poster for Troy is in the background of the second movie, and it's the first thing you see as set dressing in her home in the third movie. So, like, there is some really beautiful symmetry to the fact that she understood acting wasn't for her and just left it. Oh, but no, voice, the phone thing. She's pretending to be someone else.
I remember when we watched 2 a few weeks ago that I went on this really long justification as to why acting makes sense for her. And now I cannot remember what it was this week.
And
I
singing made
think,
sense for Lindsay Lohan.
yeah, it's certainly a very strange thing, but God, it was such a weird sequence too.
It is sort of one of my bummers of the franchise that starts here, which is that just Sydney is a bit aimless and we never know why. I shouldn't say we never know why. We can guess why, but there's never a thing where she really says, like, 1, how am I supposed to have a career? This keeps happening. Or 2, like, in 4, we finally get, well, I realized that this, like, kind of was a thing and I should write my book about it. But, like, I keep waiting for her to be, like, a private detective or, like, a self-defense specialist or something. She at no point is she ever like, well, this never stopped happening, so I just embraced it and made it my life. She kind of says that weekly about the book, and the whole kind of point of 4, which we'll get to, is that the book was a terrible idea. And I just wish that instead she was like, I started my own private security firm. And anyway, it starts here with the acting where for some reason they bring in this drama coach who is way too intense for the college production.
He doesn't
who is
even
like,
die, right? David
No.
Warner shows up in this and doesn't even die. Ugh.
He's telling her to reach into the depths of her soul, which if that's the depths of her soul, Sydney, I'm worried.
And now Troy has fallen, not by my hand, but by my prediction. So now fate has turned its eye
To
on
me.
me.
And maybe the joke in the point is that she is a bad actor, because Neve Campbell wouldn't be that bad.
Neve Campbell is spectacular, as we
Right.
are sitting here talking about her excellence.
Right.
I love that they bring back up in 4 when she and Judy cross paths that she had done theater in high school. Like, that's a nice tie back
Yeah.
into 2
Please
from
put that
4.
Tori on the board.
But yeah, you can't even project, Tori says. Yeah, it's just a weird choice for her. For someone who doesn't want attention. A hobby, maybe, but it sounded like it was her major.
Yeah.
And that's weird. It's a weird choice.
Ultimately, we lose Randy and
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. We lose Randy in this one, which is a big clue that they know this is going to be a trilogy, but they're not aware that it is going to go further than that.
We have not
Yeah.
met the top 3 Meeks yet.
No.
So I would
we lose Randy here because that is an acceptable sacrifice because they know what they'll do in the third one. They know how we'll see Jamie Kennedy again and we'll have other Meeks to deal with.
you know,
I do feel like his death is the most potent in the movie.
Right, exactly, because it really is a sacrifice.
and he's so hateful of Billy in that moment.
It's so connected to the first movie, yeah.
And he really is, for so many purposes, the Price is Right of this world's Jeopardy. He is in this very serious world where the stakes are so severe, but his behavior is always kind of yata-da-da-da-da. And so I think one of the reasons he had to die was because we need to symbolically see Joy die.
Yeah.
Although I don't know that we ever do anything with that moment. I think the moment where I love him, besides him making fun of Billy and getting stabbed, is amazing. Because he's got to tell Debbie off, even though he doesn't know that that's what he's doing. But
What a way to die, though.
right, just that he got under her skin is amazing. But the scene for him is really with Joshua Jackson, Timothy Olyphant, Sarah Michelle Gellar in the worst film studies class of all time,
Where
with a
he
professor who has no control over his students. What is this man teaching them? This is definitely a teacher who fucks his students.
I was
Anyway.
literally going to say he's just desperate to hit on Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yeah. But
Gives the best performance
Yeah.
anybody of her caliber in
Yeah.
one of these movies does.
this is
She is Buffy levels
she's
good.
primed. She's ready to go. She's never been more ready.
She hadn't even been Buffy for a year
Yeah.
yet, as I pointed out to Jonah, yeah.
Sarah
Yeah, I
Michelle
don't-
Gellar's birthday is March 14th. I just or it's either March or April 14th. It's one or the other. As a kid, I had it memorized. I just want to say I had a Scream 2 fan guide and had all of the stars' birthdays.
But this is funny because this is the Casey Becker real parallel in so many ways. This is the blonde innocent girl, but it comes at such a different moment. Anyway, it's very interesting. Let us also not forget that we have cameos by Portia de Rossi and Amelia Earhart. I'm kidding.
It's Grim Reaper, Rebecca Gayheart.
Rebecca Gayheart.
Very grim.
Very grim, very reapy, very have a three-way with Eric Dane in the pool.
I always assumed that the best ever possible thing about Dead Like Me was Rebecca Gayheart. And then we get Daisy Adair, who is a level above. Rebecca Gayheart here represents a deep misuse of so many people. I don't know. I was really surprised that you guys mentioned Rebecca Gayheart and you mentioned Portia de Rossi, but neither one of you mentioned that they cast Oh, you said you immediately knew I was going to do a joke and you sighed, and that broke my heart. Peter Gallagher's eyebrows on Portia de Rossi for this film. That really
Oh, this is before
surprises
she
me.
got that under control. I'm actually
Yeah.
glad I don't have a picture of that. Who let her get on camera?
She didn't have an Ellen.
Ah.
Yeah.
I also want to draw attention to a comment from the lovely Tori about Jerry O'Connell doesn't ever have to be the creepy, overbearing boyfriend because Liev Schreiber is around
Yep.
the corner already, chomping at the walls. We have
Yep.
not spoken very much about Cotton Weary in this film.
The touch, the feel of Cotton. Jesus God, Liev Schreiber, the fabric of my life. What an incredibly handsome man. Cotton's a fucking creep, and when Cotton ultimately dies, I have no qualms about it.
No, we'll
but
get there.
Liev Schreiber, Cotton is an okay man. He literally would never hurt Sydney.
I mean, that's the interesting thing. Cotton doesn't deserve. You don't deserve to die just because you suck. And
that's exactly how I feel about Steve Perry.
You can be gross. You can be gross and not deserve to die. And that's the thing.
Machine Gun Kelly.
This is, he fucked her mom. That sucks. Whatever. This scene is fantastic because he is touching her too much, but it's not sexual. It is that his big sin is he's so self-involved. He pushes people like cameras to be focused on him. He will not leave without getting the last word, without getting his word. He has a world designed the way he wants it. He does not kill for those things. He is not unhinged. He does not want to hurt Sydney. He wants Sydney to like him not because he cares about Sydney, but because if Sydney likes him, that might mean he's likable and maybe there's a career for that. These are all gross. That's gross, but it is not murder worthy. And that's what makes Cotton a really interesting character because he speaks to kind of a different set of rules than the Scream horror movie rules. This is like a person rules. Nobody deserves to die. If you are a petty criminal, you don't deserve to die for stealing a loaf of bread. You don't deserve to die for being gross. The rules say that there might be punishment for you in the context of the film, but in the context of what we know to be kind of right and wrong, this is a guy that doesn't deserve to die. And most people really fall more into the context of there's no question whether or not they should or shouldn't die. Most people shouldn't die, but do.
It's really fucked up. You would bring up Jean Valjean in a context where I'm not permitted to belt.
Okay.
That is.
Who stopped you?
Deeply.
No,
fucked.
Kevo, what are you doing?
If he doesn't, his head will explode.
Yeah, seriously. I have been at that 01 for the last 10 seconds. That is actually one of the hallmarks of Scream. Whether you're a good person or a bad person doesn't dictate the quality of the length of your life. I think Cotton is an example of where people can get good things for doing the right thing while being a bad person.
Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my favorite moments in the movie is at the end when Sid says, "You should ask Cotton. He's the hero." There's like a magic, like, I don't know. And I understand this is the stupidest thing anyone's ever said, but is it possible that Sidney Prescott is basically what if Kate Pride was in a horror movie? Like, the way she understands how to operate within the magic of this universe, she almost transfers her fame to Cotton in that moment, enhancing the quality of his existence as a thank you for her survival, understanding that in this world, survival is something you barter. It's very interesting.
And it's forgiveness for the fact that he fucked her mom, and that's not a crime.
True.
One of the better potential themes that is used kind of the worst throughout is Sid's mom fucking everybody, and that not being the best, but also not being the worst. I think it is a really important thing. I just don't think in 1996 through 2001 people, or even I'm going to say 2011 because I don't think 4 nails it either. I don't think people were prepared to write about that. But I do think this idea that I think the way that Sid handles it throughout is always really spot on, insofar as like this has made her life very complicated for a lot of reasons, but she never talks shit about her mom. And she never blames Cotton. But once she realizes what's actually going on, she blames Cotton when she thinks Cotton murdered her mom. But once that part is resolved, Cotton does not deserve to die. Cotton does not deserve to have a bad life because of that thing. That was whatever it was. And I feel like this is a good transition point for 3, because you mentioned the fact that she transfers her celebrity on to Cotton, and that's where we start in 3. But I want to give everybody a chance to wrap up on this one.
My only real thing that I want to draw attention to before transitioning is that a lot of the production beats of the ending of this really, really don't work for me in terms of the tone that it sets. This Twisted Sister Change Your Mind at the end of Bedazzled tone of like upbeat, twangy music. Like it sounds like the song that should be playing at the end of the College movie when the guy convinces the girl that he never thought she was a dork all along. Not the version of this movie where the man that she loved and the best friend that took care of her were murdered because of her, and she doesn't know if Dewey is going to survive again. Her oldest friend Randy was murdered. Like this is more horrific and poignant than the ending of 1, and it's the tone that they give it with the helicopter shot pulling away of her walking off all alone, and it feels a lot more upbeat and hopeful than I think it should, and that really bugs me.
The only thing I think I really want to add about Scream 2 is that Scream 2 represented my own puberty in so many ways. It is a growing point that is so awkward, and it's about things that like never quite align with the identity of the franchise ever again. I think about how many records I had to own in high school, or I would die, Mom. If I did not have every single song by the Abandoned Pools, I would die. And Scream 2 is that for Sydney. She is an incredibly complicated person who is just trying to navigate survival, and sometimes it involves a weird stint in college. And yeah, TK, to your point about this is a great transition point to 3, I do find it a little hard to believe that she just dropped out of college and a year later, because they are very clear that 4 years ago, Roman first approached 4 years ago, he first approached Maureen, who dismissed him, and then he approaches Billy and Stu, which means 4 years ago, Maureen died. 3 years ago, Scream 1 took place, I guess. So maybe there's about 6 months to a year of wiggle room, but
not enough time to graduate college.
Yeah. So
No,
this is just that Sydney dropped out of college, and we find her in Scream 4.
Scream 3.
Oh my gosh! Thank you so much. I am ready to be at 4.
I know,
honestly.
man. Well, and I don't think we'll have to spend as long on 3.
Thank God.
No, I don't even have as many pictures.
3 to make a comparative point. My God, I feel so bad that I am so eager to get past 3 that I went right to 4. It's like Alien all over again. Scream 3 is the Talkboy tape recorder of films. It seems really cool when you see the commercial, and the first time you play with it, it's really exciting. But when you realize there's only 2 fucking things that slow down or speed up, and it's so fucking boring. The best part of this franchise for me is Sid. I have very little stake in this franchise outside of Sid. Guess I love the Carpenter sisters a lot. I guess they're really beautiful women, but they're like, inside, not like judging their appearance, though they're also very lovely. But the whole franchise for me is Sid. So much of this franchise installment is Sid being separated from the crew. That's not how I want to play. I don't watch Wild 'N Out to watch Nick Cannon sit on the sidelines. No, I want him in there making the jokes. So, yeah, this is absolutely my least favorite of the 6 by far, actually. And funny, before this all happened, before we rewatched for this particular project, I probably would have said 2 was my least favorite. But man, I think as a kid, I was just distracted by how beautiful I thought Roman was. This is a bummer of a film. As a technical achievement, it is clearly 4 scripts cut together in a way that offers very little respect to anybody involved in any of those cuts.
Yeah, there are so many great elements here. Parker Posey, the revelation, gorgeous guy. Why am I forgetting his name now? Scott Foley.
God, I almost said Noel Gallagher. I have to go.
Yeah.
By
Roman.
Scott Foley
on,
as yes. Scott Foley as Sydney's long lost brother. The cast of Stab 3 is it Stab 3 or Stab 2?
It's Stab 3.
Yeah, Stab 3 with like
Schwimmer and Spelling didn't want to come back for the third one.
With like Emily Mortimer as Sydney, or is she Gail? No, she's Sydney because Parker Posey's Gail.
Yeah,
she was found through a talent search, and it was originally going to be that Roman groomed her to also be a
yes,
killer.
she was supposed to be the second killer.
Yeah, and it's so
and they were
clear in
gonna
this
have
print.
they were gonna have like incest vibes with them also banging, and
right because she's Sydney. Yep. Which is, things like that you can see there were some really smart elements there, but Parker Posey isn't used correctly. So it's never funny. It's just annoying.
So it's Jezebel James all over again, minus Lauren Ambrose.
Yeah. This is
3.
Parker Posey, who at this point had been in Party Girl, which was absolutely phenomenal. Her career is, I think this is post Best in Show. It's definitely post Waiting for Guffman. So like what?
Definitely Waiting for Guffman.
Waiting for Guffman, but not Best in Show.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I'm looking now.
I can't believe how much the 3 of us love Christopher Guest films. And
Same year,
yeah. So, but definitely,
this was first.
Yeah. So, but she had definitely done Best in Show. She'd done Party Girl.
She was in the guest crew. Yeah.
She is one of those people where it's like, here's that person that we know doing their thing in this film where it's not quite their film to be there, but here they are. And yet it just isn't done right.
I find her so enjoyable that I genuinely forget every single time that she does not survive. There's no real survivors of the people who are important, right? It's just Mark and the core 3.
Also,
that's annoying, kind of.
I just want to give a huge shout out to Martha Meeks, the best character in the film.
Yes, now it's time for this diversion. Heather Matarazzo, first off, queen among queens.
The 2 films that I think you could literally chain my teenage and growth into being the man I am together by are quite literally Welcome to the Dollhouse and The Princess Diaries.
Those are your wolves.
These are my wolves. I think this woman is Meryl Streep. I will not hear slander. And so Martha Meeks is one of my top 3 characters in the whole franchise for no reason.
And I mean, like, she's another one like that. That's Welcome to the Dollhouse is such an iconic performance that to see her in this is a little bit of a reference. It's a reference to the fact that like the girl has grown up and now she's here, and the fact that she's Randy's sister who is there to like bring the word of Randy, but then like also just doesn't really get to have much of a role. So it's like the brilliant idea was there. The brilliant idea to have Heather Matarazzo was there, but then like, why is she just delivering Randy's tape? Why doesn't she end the tape and go, my brother was smart, but here's what he forgot.
Don't worry, she appears later and she's awesome.
I'm sure she does. I know she is, but she's not in this one. Like, we're talking about this one. This one makes so many dumb choices.
There's so much wasted potential and there's so much conflicted potential. And I think even this promotional shot points to them having no idea what this movie was or was supposed to be. The fact that what's his name, who in Stab is the Randy replacement, is
Ricky?
in this.
He's an homage.
And the fact that Parker Posey, looking like Drew Barrymore from Scream 1 on this. I don't know what this is supposed to be.
And the LA spotlight, like I literally kept thinking, oh, you put our ex in there. Because it's such a generic,
No,
like
but even on the poster, like, this is weird.
Yep.
it's a generic take on LA. It just doesn't feel like it's supposed to tell me that they're in Hollywood now. And what does it mean that they're in Hollywood now when the second film was all about the development and the exploration of the themes of stab? I think in many, many ways, this movie just does kind of clunk.
Yeah. Patrick Warburton, another wasted character. Another very hot man.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just like all around, so
Like-
many elements.
Keva would look so handsome in that outfit.
Yeah.
Agreed. Fully agreed.
But,
Jenny
like,
McCarthy, also a total waste.
This
Uh,
whole scene, when
Yeah.
you watch this, it's meant to like build suspense, but then
Yeah.
once you rewatch this and know Roman is the killer, she's just talking to Roman.
Yeah.
He's just torturing her.
She's getting
And
killed.
why do we care? We don't know her. I said to Nico, something that would have actually made this kind of cool would have been if this was Tori Spelling playing a metafictional version of herself, and this murdered the person who played Sydney
Yes.
in Stab, and she had to be replaced. Something like that, where that would have made the audience care. But we don't care about this before or after the reveal.
If you
Because
know
here's-
I'm so sorry.
Go.
Well, if you know the Kathy Griffin, I was in an elevator with Hanson and they talked about eating pussy bit. Like, that is such a key thing that Tori Spelling could have explored in this role that would have added a sense of meta credibility to a film that's supposed to be about meta credibility, but ultimately kind of feels like it comes out of left field.
Jenny McCarthy is not that girl. Jenny McCarthy is not Drew Barrymore, Sarah Michelle Gellar, and yeah, Tori Spelling. Tori Spelling in her own way
I
is
would have taken Nikki Cox for this.
Yeah.
there were those girls back then, and she just was not one of them. I mean, and that's not to say that, Singled Out was not iconic. I hate her now because the anti-vax stuff, but back
Yep.
then, Singled Out was iconic. She banged as the co-host in that. She was a certain kind of icon. We all knew her, but that
She in
is
Wayne's World too?
no.
think so.
Wait, no, I don't think so.
I thought her, McCarthy's appeared in one of the 90s movies, but absolutely, please continue. I'm sorry.
She just isn't that same type of person. It's not even like a one is better than the other. Yeah, she was not in Wayne's World. She just isn't. She's not really an actor. She's not really accomplished. She doesn't do. She didn't have a long career. She didn't have what?
He's thinking Olivia Diabo.
Oh my God!
Oh, Olivia Dabo.
Thank you.
and
I was
Betty
like
Jo.
looking up. I'm like, what was I thinking? It
From my
You haven't
favorite
even
movie of all
seen
time,
Wayne's
Kicking and
World
Screaming.
2. You haven't even seen Wayne's World 2, but you're thinking of Olivia Diabo as Betty Jo, the female Garth
yes.
from Wayne's World 2. You haven't even seen the goddamn movie. You drive me nuts.
You haven't seen Wayne's World 2?
He hasn't seen either one. We have to watch them.
But can
Oh my
I tell you how
God.
many
Two of my
times
favorite
I
movies of
had
all
seen
time.
Every
We're gonna watch them
single Coffee
in
Talk?
January then.
Okay, good. Olivia Dabo, who had an amazing
Oh,
guest appearance in Alias, and is in one of my favorite movies of all time, the most important film about college ever made, Kicking and Screaming by Noah Baumbach, who used to be an incredible
I-
filmmaker and is now a garbage person.
I saw her on Broadway in The
In
Odd
what?
Couple with
Love it.
Matthew Broderick and Nathan Lane and Josh Charles.
Love it.
I saw
Yeah.
it with the most unreasonably handsome oaf to ever live, real life Shrek, Brad Garrett.
Even she would have been fantastic in this role. She would have been. Yeah, I just this was unfortunate. It really set a bad tone, and from there, yeah, we just kind of keep going through stuff we don't care about. Parker Posey isn't playing a likable or fun character. The stuff about just Maureen being a rape puppet is weird.
And why
And
does she
trying
look
so
like Sarah
hard.
McLachlan?
It's
I know.
trying so hard to be edgy for a franchise that's about stabbing people. You're already pretty edgy. You didn't need to make it so much more severe. And I keep thinking about a thing that I read where the woman who played Maureen in the first movie was like just a local of the town that they filmed in,
Yeah,
who went around taking pictures with Nev Campbell and like knew nothing about that character's backstory. So like
that's
this poor
amazing.
woman who has had so much of these things thrown onto her image.
And it's such a bummer because Carrie Fisher is there playing a Carrie
You want me to
Fisher
tell
look
you who you look like?
playing a version of playing a Carrie Fisher lookalike who hates Carrie Fisher. But it just made me think, like, God, if Carrie Fisher could have read the rest of this script and been allowed to punch it up, Maureen wouldn't have been a fucking rape puppet.
You mean
Um,
Oscar winner for script writing, Carrie Fisher? I just feel like
God, that would have
all
been
too
good.
often people forget that like Carrie Fisher and people like Nev Campbell are so responsible for shaping not just their characters but the characters of other people. It is really a huge part of why this franchise works so well, because even when it kind of misses the mark with things like, oh God, what was her name? Rena Reynolds. When it misses the point with the Hollywood version of Maureen Prescott, Rena Reynolds, it gets really, really good moments of feminist identity. And I really chalk so much of that up to Courtney Cox and Nev Campbell just saying, like, hey, do women better in this film.
Yeah, I just like this would have been the one to actually do it.
Yeah.
And again, like I think put those script pages in front of Carrie Fisher, please. There are other women too, but I'm like put them in front of Nev Campbell and
Carrie Fisher could do a better job with the
precisely.
Rena Reynolds stuff.
I just like this is exactly because this is the moment where it does become a little bit more about that, about like women's place in all of this, not just people. And then some of them are women, but like specifically what happens to women in Hollywood, which is not a bad message. And what ostensibly happens to Maureen is not an uncommon story. It's just the way they talk about it and how it is. It's kind of fridgy. And I don't know. It's just, it doesn't do anything. I really think a woman being able to have rewrites of this script could have changed things. Last thing we haven't talked about before we get off this forever is Sydney's love interest. And we do need to talk about it because it's going to be important in the future.
I just want to say two things before we move on to him.
What?
Roman is the most believable part of this film. Yeah. Maureen would possibly have a child she left behind.
Yes.
Roman already being a film producer and wasting his time with this nonsense? No. But that's pretty good. As far as Mark goes, I just want to say that Mark is definitely into the same sort of, I don't like your ghost face games, Cotton. Okay. So growing up, Kelly Rutherford was the hottest woman I had ever seen in my fucking life. And I would have gouged my eyes out for Megan from Melrose Place, which is the gayest way to describe the hottest woman, right? But there were times where I'd be like, am I still pansexual or am I just gay? And I'd be like, no, Kelly Rutherford, got it. And so, like, her inclusion in this film is such a highlight for me. She has no agency. She has the least amount of personality development since Steve, who is the guy who was disemboweled in front of Casey in the first one. It is heartbreaking at what a misuse of Kelly Rutherford this is. Evidently, originally, she was going to be playing a very different role, and it was a very different character, and it involved Freddie Prinze Jr. playing the sleaziest low-life version of the killer
Right.
in the third stab. But ultimately, they changed their mind. Originally, there was going to be a line referencing that 100% Cotton was actually the #1 talk show in Australia, and they moved it to the US to use Liev Schreiber instead. So, all right. Anyway, all said and done, Mark is the creepiest guy, and he really seems like he would want to play ghost face games. And I kind of got to be honest, it works for me. And I bet Sid's super into it too. What a fucking weirdo. He is way too intense, and it's so hot on him.
I love the choice. And I even like his choices for what he's going to do with the character. it's just out of nowhere. We've kind of now established that Sid goes through boyfriends like James Bond and Bond movies. I didn't really think we were supposed to hang on to any of them. I certainly didn't think if we hung on to one of them, it would be him. And then I think it is insane that they will go on to play brother and sister on Grey's Anatomy.
You know, it's a real Wanda Pietro sort of thing. It's
It
very
happens a lot.
very modern.
It does,
does.
you know, there's limited
You know,
roles for actors.
I feel, I mean, if we're going to talk about them ending up together in any capacity, is that on the table?
Oh,
Yeah.
for it.
It's from a different set of writers, from a reboot of the franchise. It's one of the many things that I feel like they introduce to sort of, I think they view it as remedying elements of the original of four that they felt like could have been improved on. Because the thing is, when we come back to Sydney in four, we are very strongly given the impression that she is single, and that's hugely driven forward. We don't know if it's something that changes between 4 and 5, or if it's just one of those things where it secretly could have been going on the entire time. But I feel like the only reason that they do it is because of who Patrick Dempsey is, and wanting to give Sydney something happy, and wanting to do it with someone who became someone who was so synonymous with happy endings in pop culture. He's the McDreamy. If he hadn't gone on to become the McDreamy, I think it would be a very different situation. Especially because I agree with Nico. He comes across as creepy in so many ways here that I think he makes more sense as a disposable love interest, and for us to come back to her single.
And don't get me wrong, I love being bald. It looks real good on me. But there's something specifically about the density of Patrick Dempsey's hair that it's sort of like TK, where I really understand why everybody is like, I'm going to reach down and hold on for dear life if he's down there. That I think is a huge selling point of Patrick Dempsey's intensity. It's not just that he is so intense, it's that he's intense, but in a way that you find alluring. And I think Sid's intensity, as a result of everything she's been through, allows her to sort of see past some of the, maybe red flaggish behaviors. Like when he's like, Sid, put the gun down. I think he's about to beat her to death. Like the look in his eyes is terrifying. But all said and done, I have no problem that they have kids together. I love Mark. I think he's great. I guess I just root for Patrick Dempsey. Sure hope that Mark doesn't stop on the side of the road to help anybody with their car. But, we shall see what happens.
I also just think it's odd because they have what feels like, again, Sydney should be running a private defense contracting company, or like a security company. And their vibe is very much like, I know that you're a police officer, so like you're trained. I've actually survived 2 of these mass murders already, so let's buddy cop. And there doesn't appear to be a lot of sexual chemistry until the moment where they are in the police station together, right before she goes to Roman's house. She steals the bulletproof vest and goes to Roman's house, and they're in the police station together, and he leans in too close to be like, oh, it's like one of those, like, about killing, do you? And it's just like
sexy cookies.
Somehow it becomes a sexual moment. And from there, that's like the only hint of like romantic chemistry between them.
It's very tacked on.
They're both in the house together. And again, like there's a thing of like, trust me, because they've had the sexual moment in the police station. I don't 100% not buy that it's not trust me. I have feelings for you. But if you cut that moment out, it would still be trust me. We see each other as murder solvers and murder survivors, and it's all platonic.
Yeah.
Then you get to the last scene where he hangs out with them. Now let's all have popcorn and watch a movie. And to me, that's the thing that really comes out of nowhere, where it's like, I sort of thought they were going to end, maybe Sid becomes a police officer after this. I sort of thought that they were going to end up as, working partners. And instead there's this thing of like, he's joined the gang.
Yeah, he's just hanging out at the celebratory survival dinner. Like, what?
Which only, which would be fine. And the fact so we're going to leapfrog him in 4, and he'll come back. He'll be revealed to be around again in 5. It only sucks because he's not around in 4 to be like, well, I'm in the gang now too.
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is that when we're talking about Scream, we're talking about a franchise that is defined by its survivors. Even if we see Mark as a survivor, he didn't really make a powerful impact throughout the film. And I think that is something that kind of weighs against him in that regard.
Yes. And the fact that he ultimately doesn't really come back, he just is referenced.
I also think something about what you're saying plays a huge element into the 4th film in regards to the notion of a group and the notion that it feels like there was a dissolution of the group in a way that undermines their efficacy in solving the mystery at the end of the day. There's so much in the 4th movie of Gail being annoyed that she is being excluded from the investigation and Sydney being apart from the investigation. And I think if we ultimately do come to understand that Mark is one of these survivors and part of that group, it does feel like him then being removed from that. There is just such a huge element of that from the 4th film, I feel.
And, I'm so glad that you brought up the transformation of Gale across these films. I just kind of want to real quick run Gale 1 to 4. It must have been so hard to be Courtney Cox's agent in the 90s. I don't think it was hard to be Courtney Cox. I'm not saying she had like an easy life, but like, literally one of the 6 best paid sitcom stars in the world. Not so bad. But as a result of Courtney Cox having to compete with the identity of Jennifer Aniston, I feel like a lot of times Gale kind of suffered as a result. There was a lot of, we have to push Gale to the forefront as much as possible. And it sometimes meant that Gale was thrust into positions that made her very unlikable. I don't feel that it's until Scream 4 that they really have a handle on who Gale should be. And unfortunately, it seems to be and I mean this lovingly, the general character of Courtney Cox at that point. In part because Gale was born much of that same era that we said Tatum is from, where she is like that bitch girl in the 90s. I was that bitch girl in the 90s. You had to change. And so did Gale. By 3, by 4, the Gale we get is a much more realized whole person. And I think that really relays the identity of a more complete woman much better.
I kind of don't agree.
Oh, that's totally cool. Yeah.
Because I think Gale being aimless sucks.
She gets aim. Don't worry. I'm also watching this with 5/6 goggles.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm saying like I'm for. I don't think Gale sucks throughout the franchise. 4 sucks for Gale, and Gale sucks in 4 because she's given up her career to live in this town, which makes no sense. She has written a book but can't write more. Also makes no sense. There's a thing overall where I'm just like, this is the thing I've been saying about Sydney, and now it applies to Gale, but like, if you survive 3 serial killings, there have to be guaranteed career options for you.
Plus, I can't be killed. You guys need to give me a talk show.
Yeah, I mean, again, I Sydney, defense contracting, personal security, for Gale, I kept being like, why didn't you have a podcast? Like this whole thing is about the new media, like the what people, what has changed about media since social media happened and since everybody got broadband and phones. And although weirdly, there's like the phone technology is too behind for what it ought to be because it's 2011.
Streaming technology in 4 is fucking psychotic.
Very odd mix of stuff. But I really don't like this depiction of Gale as like, because I decided to live with Dewey, I could then no longer do anything.
I don't really find that. I agree. I don't find that believable. You're kind of forcing us to accept that Gale is a victim of circumstances that don't really exist. She could have found something else to do.
And I don't hate the conflict of Dewey as now sheriff, who has not dealt with having to do an investigation with Gale and Sydney for 11 years. Does not quite know how to handle letting them have information. Back in the day when he was just Deputy Dewey and things were a little bit more loosey-goosey, he was more willing to let them know what he knew. But now, all of these years later, he sort of doesn't know when he can share information with them and what should just be for police, because that's his career. And he hasn't, like this, it's been so long. We just never talk about any of that stuff. And I don't think any of that stuff, I don't think Gale has to not have any sort of worthwhile career for that all to still apply. Like if Gale has a true crime podcast, I know we're like it's 2011, so we're a little bit before true crime podcast, but podcasting has been around now for 8 years at this point. Podcasting really started around 2003. So like, Gale could have something. Gale can have something in the works in new media. Gale could have had a series of popular true crime books and, had been trained in investigating forensics for writing purposes. There's so much that I would have believed that would have given Gale a career that Dewey still could have said, I get that this is your career and you know what you're talking about. Just, I'm a police officer. I can't just give information to civilians. And instead, the argument seems to be, Gale, if you had a job, if you were competent, I could give you information regardless of the fact that you're a civilian. But because you're just kind of a nobody, I'm sort of unsure what to do here. I just don't like the way it plays out.
But Officer Judy Hopps isn't responsible for... I'm sorry. I fucking love this character, and
I do too.
Sorry, I don't mean to do this to you, but her role in 5 is so phenomenal.
I believe it. I'm excited.
I love her role in 5 so much.
My dog is named after Officer Judy Hopps from Zootopia, so as soon as we met Officer Judy from this, I was very excited.
I love this character, and I think what she represents is the humor of Scream. Scream 4 lacks so much of the loving humor that was pervasive throughout the original trilogy. Judy sometimes kind of comes off as the slapstick replacement for Dewey because Dewey's mustache becomes so offensive, it's hard to find him funny. Please don't get me wrong. I think that David Arquette gives his all to Dewey in a way that so few actors ever do any character. And it's not necessarily David Arquette's fault that sensitivity training for things like limps and spinal injuries and nerve damage sometimes presented like, hey, just be like, about it. Not his fault that at that time there wasn't more knowledge, but it occasionally makes these early films watch a little tough. By 4, he's got it down. And that is one thing that I really appreciate about David Arquette in 4. I do not appreciate the waste of beautiful Anthony Anderson. I do not appreciate the waste of beautiful Mr. Blair Waldorf.
I think their deaths are perfect.
The deaths are great, but I wish they had more lines. Also,
I do too, but this movie is...
It's a little too Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, that's all.
But
I think it's, I think it's great. It's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Like, it's, there's already too much happening in this movie. That Allison Brie has to show up and have a solo death scene is a lot of time spent on a really unlikable character who isn't funny. Who should be.
Your teacher says do the weekly reader. You're like, it's free period. But God, why does it have to suck so much?
Allison Brie is so funny. So there's no reason this shouldn't be funny, except for the writing isn't good. So she just comes off as a shrew. Again, it's the same thing with Parker Posey. I mean, and I know this is different writers, but like the point is you get these women who are phenomenal and will work with good comedy. And then you just kind of give them like bitch, stupid bitch, business bitch, plus murder.
Those are some of my favorite characters.
I wish they were written better. And I feel like there's nothing funny about the death. There's nothing that works for me. I love when Anthony Anderson and Seth Cohen die because they're just hilarious slapsticky murders. Those two guys are playing Seth Cohen and Anthony Anderson like they're
Hang Time.
And Hang Time. Thank you. Their very appearance there. What's yours? Blackish?
To tell the truth, where he most successfully piloted one of the oldest game shows in American television history to its longest running, most successful version ever.
I just sort of feel like his mom didn't like those drag queens because they were gay.
It's weird because other times, like, gay people are all she wanted to talk to.
Yeah.
Like, she would be like, I'm bored with those straight people. Give me the gay. So, like, I love Mama Doris.
She's odd, yeah.
I think she might be a phobe. But anyway, their death scenes are funny. So it's fine that I get, like, yes, they could have been in it more, but a bunch of stuff. I really think if we're going to give more screen time, it's for Kirby. So
I'm trying to be calm. Okay, listen, just background.
So yeah, I mean, we gotta go to the fact that there's three big characters that we need to talk about.
I talk to TK every minute of the day that I possibly can, and I've been like, "Did you watch 4 yet? Do you love Kirby yet? Do you want to talk about Kirby? Kirby?" I would probably try to suck in the world and then hit the down button and turn into everything I ate to be like Kirby. That is how much I love Kirby.
We've got Emma Roberts on the left there, Hayden Panettiere as Kirby, and then
tell the story about how I met Hayden Panettiere. Is that what's happening?
And then we've got Blank in the back, hot for death.
This girl, hot for death. I like that.
Bachel Rilson.
This woman, this entrepreneur.
I just want to say that I think Kirby really represents so much of the magic of early Scream. I think she is a terrific character. And the joke I was going to make is that I actually really don't care for heroes or specifically the Save the Cheerleader, Save the World arc. That's not really my thing. But I genuinely love Kirby. She is a rare shining star in a very complicated, messy film. That said, I just maybe wish that Emma Roberts had been a little bit more methed out for this performance. She gives great, but I feel like we could have pushed her to give incredible.
So it's weird. Like, you know, what I said at the start of the episode when Kevo mentioned that Tatum could have been Natasha Lyonne. That's insane because Natasha Lyonne does not fit amongst that group of people. Natasha Lyonne cannot speak as though she is from Woodsboro, California. What is she doing there if she's in the movie in a way that I would love, that I think could have been really cool and funny? This is Hayden Panettiere in this movie. For one thing, she looks far too old to be there. I can set that one aside. That is very much a trope. What is that hair? I'm obsessed with it, but it is not a high school child's
American Gladiator. It
is not a high school child's haircut.
One of the things I really feel strongly about the character of Kirby, and it's what was a huge part of my disappointment about this film at the time, that I really think 5 and 6 helped save and justify, is that Kirby really truly is the actual final girl of this film. She is a cross between Sydney and Gale. And the fact that you are left with the idea that she dies from this movie is part of what makes this movie so horrible. Nico has a lot to say about how this movie was originally supposed to be a trilogy, and they condensed everything that was supposed to be into this movie. And you can see why when this did so poorly financially. But I think the fact that, however it all shaked out, the fact that we did get Kirby as a survivor retroactively enhances this film in a way that didn't work at the time.
And
I definitely get that and agree. And I think you nailed it. She is a final girl. You know, she is, and I like the idea she's a combination of Sydney and Gail. It's just, what is a combination of Sydney and Gail doing in high school in 2011?
she's
That
having
is,
a real rough go of it.
well, I mean, yes, but like she seems more mature than all of them. She's wearing a blazer all the time. There's so many things where I'm just like, I don't know quite how you do it without focusing too much on her, but I really do want her. I want there to be some explanation for why this adult woman, this entrepreneur, is here. I'm not going to start the Sneasler monologue, but I could. Why is she here? I really would like to know. I don't think it's a bad idea that this is the character. I just think it's a bad idea to not say anything about it. Meanwhile, Emma Roberts in 20 minutes is about to become the hottest bitch on FX, who can play exactly the role that she is supposed to be playing in this movie. And instead, they're just like, I don't know who this is compared to who every character that she plays for Ryan Murphy is.
If I can just make a comparison, for me, it's really that, like, I'm very clear about this. The best character in the Scream franchise for me is Sid. By far, like, very little comes close to Kirby. Kirby is number 2 by a very wide margin, and then number 3 is Martha, and then everybody else can fall in line. But I love Kirby so much that Kirby is the standout is sort of a failure to align Emma Roberts' incredible talent with this director's ability to channel that. There's moments of coyness that come across like uncertainty. There's moments of deception that come across kind of confused and lazy. And I'm a little disappointed that ultimately Emma Roberts watches really well the first time and less well in subsequent watches. Kieran Culkin is a joke.
It's not Kieran, it's Rory.
Oh, it's Rory. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Rory apologies, is a joke for how he's treated. I bet there's 20 minutes of his character on the floor somewhere that would have given him an arc.
Yep.
His performance is great. His character is treated like the least important, having seen every minute of the entire franchise. His character is given the least value as a killer of anyone.
On the watch that we did today of Scream 4, I found myself the most impressed with Emma Roberts' performance. Not like, Oscar, but I found her to be one of the most impressive. You find out this person is the killer, and how does that watch differently? Performances since Skeet. When you are watching her reactions to these things, and you watch the things that she does, and these subtle moments of excitement as her plan is clearly unfolding. And you watch the way that when she gets a call from the killer, she almost immediately puts it on speakerphone, because this isn't about her. It's about building the audience around her. And there's all of these things that when you watch knowing that she's the killer, I feel like it enhances rewatching her performance. But I don't know that I would have been fulfilled by the original plan of seeing her survive and the killer element be drawn out over multiple movies. It's not something that I would have enjoyed watching over multiple movies for sure. Her character is super unlikable on both sides of the coin too. She's unlikable as you're watching and you think she's not the killer. She's unlikable when you're watching and you find out she is the killer. So that's really rough. I think that is another thing as well that makes it more Kirby's movie than it makes it hers, that Kirby is such a dynamic and engaging character.
And it just, I don't know why they made her so mousy. I think they thought that it would make her seem unsuspecting.
Yes.
But when her one best friend is like a boardroom bitch at 15, and the other best friend is a model. It just comes off like there's something weird and wrong with her, like defective, incorrect, not like, oh, she's kind of a chill. Like Tatum was kind of, I mean, Tatum's got the nipples out mid-film, so like Tatum's a sexier girl, and Sid is a little bit more soft and unassuming, but like the balance is pretty whole. There are moments where they look like essentially the same degree of woman. One just might, be a little hornier than the other. I don't know why these two are hanging out with Emma Roberts.
I actually feel that an element that could have been built into the story as to why they are hanging out with Emma Roberts is because of her notoriety and being the still living in Woodsboro cousin of the original victim of the Woodsboro killings. I think that's something that could have played into as an element of why she's even part of this group that they don't. And I really feel strongly about 3, 4. They both have a lot of wasted potential in a lot of ways, and I feel like 4 hits a lot of it better than 3 did. But there's even stuff like that where there's elements like that that could have been better fed into the film. The moment when the vice president of shoes is like, I have scars too. Nobody asked me about my scars. Mary McDonnell is such a weird choice for that role, and knowing that it was originally supposed to be Heather Graham, the levity of that moment would have played. Lauren Graham. Sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say because Heather Graham.
Heather Graham. No, so my bad. A graham cracker.
Don't worry, there were plenty of reasons why not.
Well,
but Lauren Graham would have played that in such a lighter way that it feels so strange.
The only thing the thing I think is interesting about both of those castings is those are both women that give a fuck about their appearance and do not show, like, I mean, Mary McDonnell is in her 70s now and still serving cunt on House of Usher. She still looks hot as fuck. And in this, I think she's really like, I mean, not the best photo, obviously.
Yeah, no, there she looks like a John Romita drawing of a woman being attacked by a sprinkler.
But brilliant description. But in the movie, like, I think she looks a little elevated, and it just all falls on Emma Roberts, who I guess the other problem is I only think of Emma Roberts as American Horror Story Coven and then like Scream Queens and all of these things in which she is this horrifying bitch who is super hot and has a really bad attitude. And I just think that she plays that so well. And I don't think she can do this. Like, she is not our generation's Nev Campbell. Nev Campbell plays Nev Campbell in The Craft too. She plays Nev Campbell in Party of Five.
And I'll take my scars. And I'll take my scars.
It's always. I think that's why it had to be this one movie. She had to be dispatched in this movie. She was never going to, even if that story was intriguing, she was never going to pull it off as a leading actor, making us want to engage with her as being that villain, because it barely holds on for the one film.
Well, what's funny is I feel like then it doesn't work because now if you keep it going, she is now just playing Ryan Murphy's characters. Like, she's playing, you've now done too much of a 180 on her. And while the whole time she could have been that girl, you've now suddenly put her in that role in a way that's not going to feel authentic because you lied to me and told me that she was this like Sydney if Sydney had gone a little crazy instead. Anyway, it bums me out because I love the idea of, it's not even the next generation, it's intragenerational, I think, because they're, probably not even 15 years apart. But the little sister, I really loved the idea of the little sister generation showing up and having a thing. And Emma Roberts, when I look at her career as a whole, I'm like, dang, that's a good one for the Scream franchise. You know it because she's later in a franchise called Scream Queens. But alas, we cannot take her out of this. And I'm glad that we do take Kirby. Much better role for Hayden Panettiere. I still really don't get it, but I'm excited for 5 because I want to see how, again, this adult woman.
But I appreciate that what you don't get is because you feel like she's too good for this. You're like, I don't get what she's doing here.
Yeah.
She doesn't belong here. Someone needs to rescue her from this.
I think she's Drew Barrymore in Never Been Kissed that was trying to do a story on what high school kids are like today, and she got way too caught in it. Yes.
To protect
that would be amazing.
Another ghost face comes up.
Yes.
It's actually, I can't tell you how much that works with her later character. Holy shit. I want to say this about 4 that makes 4 tricky. 4 was about an era that was a little bit different. You know, we joke in 3 about, we had to put out fake scripts because of the internet. But 4 is in a time where spoilers is a common terminology. And as a result, 4 is about more shocks and the overt Gollum-like hatred for Sid that Jill has when she's like riding her like it's the My Pony video in the hospital bed. One of the things that I find so impressive about that moment is it changes Sid forever. And not to get too much into the later stuff, this is the moment that the murders have to get cool. Every murder up through now has been cut them, stab them, shoot them, slice them, make them dead, right? It's all very, Dexter about it. But this is the moment that you've got to start getting kind of bones about it, right? Clear. Boosh! Like, I mean, that is a moment, and then her head is smoking. There's literal smoke coming off of Jill's head when she gets back up, and I'm convinced that the reason Sid shoots her is to let the smoke out to help her. But there is a transformative moment where Sid makes a decision that everything is a weapon, not to conjure this particular person, but Ani DeFranco once said, any tool is a weapon if you hold it right. And that really, oh my God, it's absolutely a top 10 horror moment of all time for me. There is a much cooler kill in 5.
It really, though, harkens back to something that you always point to, one of your favorite moments in the first film, when she digs into Billy's
oh my God, when she gets
stab wound. It's one of the things, and it's one of the things that most frustrates me about this franchise when it doesn't get it right. When we're like, you should be kicking this person in the head while they are vulnerable.
It should be an American History X curb stomp at all times.
It's doing everything to survive, and the clear moment was, it really was an escalation. So much about this film was an escalation of the concept and the brand. While these killings are about Sydney, they're also not about Sydney, and it's giving for the first time the idea and permission for things about this to not be fully about Sydney. It always has to harken back to the core, Woodsboro, Billy and Stu, Maureen, all of these things, but it's also about the fallout outside of Sydney, and it's about advancing what that means.
And I will say I am excited for that particular element since I have not gotten there yet. I do see the breaking of the mold that happens here, where we finally cut through the sort of glass box of it has to always be about what happened with Maureen and how that went all the way forward through the end of Scream 3. And if we re-reference this franchise again without that being such a central thing, it does then open up a lot of possibilities. I also, just now, I have looked through every Wikipedia and IMDb page for these films a billion times for my notes. One credit I completely missed this entire time is that Nico Todorola is the boyfriend in Scream 4.
okay.
Nico
I
also forgets every time.
Every time
Yes,
I
yes.
literally say out loud, "Holy shit, that's a fucking beautiful boy."
Well,
And
because
Kevin
he's
goes,
like 22. Yeah,
Kevin goes,
he doesn't
"Yes."
look like he'd be.
You say it every time. Oh, he looks 40 there, and that's what I'm into. I want to call him daddy. Are you kidding me? Like, that's
He
fucking
looks like a
right, yeah.
40-year-old twink, and then by the time he's on Younger with Button Soster, he starts to look like a more developed man.
He is the
That's why you
worst.
don't recognize him.
I'm so sorry. It is a legal requirement. While she is in the production of Sweeney Todd on Broadway, we have to legally refer to her as Queen Sutton Foster at all times until she is no longer in the production.
What do we call Grobes?
Good news, I will not need to refer to her at all. He's the worst. I hate him.
So hot.
He is very beautiful.
It's like a sexy velociraptor. It makes no sense.
He is annoying as shit. I hate when he's on Drag Race. That's all I have to say about Nico Todorola.
Well, you brought him to the table, so
I know. I just wanted to shit on him for a second.
Wait, speaking of people who got
you
shit
might
on,
be into that.
the guy who's not maybe gay, I can't remember his name. Not
Oh.
Randy.
Everything about
this
Randy
fucking dude. I fucking hate
stuff.
this dude too. This Frankie Muniz wannabe.
Can I tell you, he's actually my least favorite part of the movie in a lot of ways.
Yes, he should be.
He represents nothing.
Nothing.
He is a black hole in the film. The actor.
The only reason why it's not just Rory Culkin is because it's not. If Rory Culkin is
dropping.
wearing the streaming device at all times, he can't be Ghostface.
Yes.
But you fucking writers, at today, when people wear GoPros around, people still do not stream like this. In 2011, nobody streamed like this. I don't even think we're at 3G in 2011. With broadband Wi-Fi, people did not have the capability to stream like this in
Do people see why I'm attracted to him now? When he gets that angry, it's so cute.
Oh, man.
It's very annoying. This really
Right.
took me out. As soon as I saw the fucking thing on his head, and the fact that he's like, Gail Withers, you dumb old bitch. It was the worst thing in the world. The fact that Gail did not immediately put a fucking lasso around his neck and start dog walking him around the fucking school parking lot for the rest of the movie. Biggest sin in the whole thing. That streaming device is a fucking criminal offense. Had no right to be in there. Just absolutely ruins everything. This
That
kid
immediately
is
draws my attention too, as well, to the fact that this is the first time she's interacting with this media club, and she's lived in this town for how long? Been the wife of the sheriff. People act like they've never met the sheriff's wife before at times. It's bizarre. Why is that not something that she was doing with her life if it was available?
I mean, if
So
Deborah
weird.
Norville lived in your small town, you would know, and you would be like, the crazy bitch from Inside Edition lives here. It's Gail Withers. She would absolutely be the advisor for that club. You are 100% right. I didn't even think about that part.
I mean, it's so weird.
And I think that actually would have been a better setup for the start if she was the person for the club, and immediately she goes in and goes, guys, this is the thing that I've been preparing you for. Now we have a story.
And then to have it be revealed that it's the Culkin when there is someone who has a connection to him. So many of these things would have
Exactly.
improved it.
We fixed this movie in 30 minutes of just chatting. What is wrong with you that you had all this time and this is what you wrote? This is why it's a little frustrating. I get why you guys like this one, and I do like it too. I definitely like it better than 3. It is better than 3. I just get so frustrated when I see silly mistakes. I'm sorry, I've been talking over you twice. Nico, go for it.
No, everything's good. I mean, that's what I love about this topic. That we want to talk over each other is exciting. If I was like, hey guys, can we talk about this thing that nobody else cares about? It wouldn't really matter. But we're talking about something that makes us all so excited. It just feels so good. I want to say 2 things. Number 1, this is the most exemplified version of the inequitable killers. Without too many spoilers, 5 and 6 don't really do inequitable killers anymore, because it's not.
Yes,
They just do it too much. It just stops being interesting. And
I get what you mean.
this is the most inequitable killers. Jill is like Jill is Tracy Lords in 1989. It's like there is nothing coming for this 17-year-old on the planet.
She didn't turn on him. There was no plan and any time that he was going to survive for her.
Yeah, and then she just kills him. Like it's a
That was
lot.
always. Yep.
I just want to put out there my numbers are probably, like I said, 98 for number 1, 85 for number 2, a big old 55 for number 3, and I'm going to give number 4 a generous 78. And you know, the reason is really because this movie okay, I do not love 5 and 6 the way a lot of people do, but fuck, the core 4 are the greatest fucking survivor team in like any fucking horror movie ever. And you could not have had the core 4 without the watch party stabathon in the living room in this film. There is something so potent about the energy of Jill and of my precious Kirby. I was actually trying to remember Rory Culkin's character's name, but it again eludes me, as does the dead faggot. But
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter because they're barely even referenced ever again. This movie really reminded us that Scream was supposed to be about teenagers in a world where it clearly became about 40-year-olds playing 24-year-olds. So I have to give this a 78 because it really reminded the franchise to stay young, and I really loved number 4 for Kirby.
I think your grading is spot on. I would maybe put 2 at like an 88. I'd maybe get it up to a B plus. But
Very
yeah,
generous of you because you have a very discerning eye. Like you really do understand like nuance a little bit better than I do. You're very often like, okay, my little meatball, everything can't be a 99. And so like, you know, your discerning eye, hearing you say, I think you said 88.
yeah, I think so. I think I give it just a little bit more. It's very funny. You're like that with stuff you like.
Yeah.
You're plenty discerning when you're a little bit more ambivalent. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I do think 55 is about where we're at. And then I would have even gone. If somebody had said 80 for 4, I would have accepted it. But 78 is about where we're lying at. I mean, it just really does need to take some punishment for not being better.
Yeah.
It could have gotten away with not being great. It could have been great without trying to be great. But the fact that, again, just these little things that I was pointing out, just feeling like, I don't know, Kevin Williamson always disturbed us a little bit because he wrote really well for appealing to kids in a way that is kind of like how adults who try to fuck teenagers speak to them.
Describe it as creepy Reddit shit.
Where, you know, you just want somebody to tell you that you're mature and that you speak really intelligently, and because you actually do, you are a mature kid and you do work really hard on your vocabulary and you do try and speak well.
There was daddy's little girl fornicating on his bed right in front of him.
Adults still should not try and fuck you. But anyway, like, Kevin Williamson got something about teens, and it's not always maybe a good thing, but on paper, when you're writing a script and pants are on all around, it was okay. It genuinely felt like not only did the writers here not get teens or like the culture at all, I don't think they...
One?
In 4, sorry.
Okay.
I don't think they really got the adults either. I think they kind of missed it.
Kevin Williamson, so I think it says a lot about how 10 years later he sort of had fallen off and was probably still on the same headset that he was in for Dawson's Creek.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, here's my big takeaway. I suggest... Oh, sorry, what, Kevy?
Kevin's got to give his grades.
Oh, I'm so sorry, sweetie. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. I agree with most of it, what everyone says as well. I only don't agree within the 50s for Scream if we're going by the American academic rubric. If we're going by actual scale, yeah, probably in the 50s. If we're going by American academic rubric, I'd probably say more like a D. I find it passable, but there is so much wasted potential in it. Uh, but yeah, I would maybe even lower 4 a little bit more for various reasons. Not by a lot, though.
You know, at the end of the day, I had asked everybody to do this project because Scream had always been my entry point to horror, which would go on to, dictate my love of things like Buffy the show, because Buffy the movie is not horror. Buffy the movie is basically Plan 9 with Christy Swanson. So let's not, right? But when we sat down to do this, I had never realized the sort of, I don't know, film study that this would bring out in me, like understanding how excited I am about the fact that the opening sequence of Scream 1 shows this big open gate that does not make Casey safe. And then ultimately, we see in the third film at the end, Sid open her gate to say, I understand that safety doesn't come from a gate, it comes from self. And then to understand that basically everybody related to her mother is a sociopath. In 4 is a really powerful moment. This was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had with these two guys. I loved having Jonah and Tori in the comments, as well as Tasty Cake and more. It is always so exciting to be a part of this, but like, I think the person I'm most excited to kind of like get their opinion on is like young me, seeing how like this film franchise that I saw as a kid, and then we went for my birthday, Kevo, that was one of my birthday movies, if you remember, right? We did Scream 4. I did Scream for 2 birthdays, 3 and 4, because February birthday, right? And,
Yeah.
This grew up with me, and not everything that grew up with me grew up so well. It was such a beautiful thing to see that Scream didn't just grow up well, it continues to change films, as Scream 6 is the most successful iteration of the franchise yet. But I will say that I think Jenna Ortega's performance in Scream 5 and 6 is like one of the best things I've ever seen in a horror movie in my life, even though I really fucking hate her character.
Well, we will be back to discuss that.
In our stabby, I thought you were going to keep going. I'm so sorry. With our stabby
Yeah.
New Year, I am so excited that we got to spend a Merry Screamsmas and a stabby New Year together. Kevo, what is your number 1 film in the franchise? And if you've got like a special thing, like I'm going to start us off, obviously Scream 1, best film, but my special spot of the ones we talked about, 4. Not enough people respect it, and it's a really special movie. How about you, Kevy?
I am probably just gonna have to say the original. It's there's so much to it, and it is such a turning point in pop culture in so many categories, not even just horror, not even just teen, just like media in general, was such a turning point for us that we could talk about just that movie for the same length that we've talked about all 4 today.
Truly, my notes are extraordinary. And I want to thank you so much, the two of you both, for pulling together all of those images. Kevy, I definitely appreciate the majority of images you pulled together, but TK, it would not have been an episode without that pièce de résistance. That is the Debbie salting the earth in the background.
Oh my god.
Happy to help.
So
what about you, T? What's your highlight?
If we're talking movie, I'm gonna put you on to Scream 2. One of the things we talked about when we watched Scream 1 together recently was like, Scream 1 for me is an early 90s. It comes out in 1996, but it's obviously filmed a while before that. Youngins, it used to take a long time to film and edit.
I think it actually debuted in January at film festivals, so it had been filmed in early 1995.
Right. So it very much has an early half of the 90s feel to it, in terms of like the clothing aesthetic, the cars that you see on the street, the decorations in the house, the way that Sid is made up. Again, she feels very much like her character on Party of Five. The color tones that Nico was mentioning were just more popular back then. Everything was
over like the horizon in the first film.
There's so much of sort of a shift towards browns and reds and oranges. And that's just all over the early 90s. That was so much a part of the aesthetic. I can point you to so many different pieces of album art, television, so much stuff that really goes with that. There is a sharp shift in Scream 2 that carries on into Scream 3, where both of those are very much latter half of the 90s films. The aesthetic changes drastically. It's brighter. The girls are in more like pastels. There's a lot like the focus is sharper. The haircuts are more severe. All around, it is just a big cultural and aesthetic shift that happens very quickly. You can hear it in things like the music as well. You know, there's just so much that changes in that 2-year period between the films. And I think for a lot of viewers who are maybe a little bit younger, who are coming to this without having had the experience, paying attention to that really big shift sort of starts to give you some insight and clues into what creators and creatives were beginning to trend on and focus on as this franchise grew into itself.
I am so damn excited that we're going to come back and talk about 5 and 6 that I'm a little bit uneven on, right? I'm super excited to talk about the 3 seasons of Scream the TV series because the first 2 seasons are fine. The acting is great. The lead is incredible. She really is absolutely fucking incredible. And then she goes on to play Madeline Usher, who is in Scream 4. It's amazing. It's super.
It's a really interesting interpretation of the concept and a really fascinating bridge between 4 and this new era of the Scream films that we are in, that we will have plenty to say about. There's good, there's bad, and there is an unknown element of what is to come. So plenty to say next week. So certainly tune in when we will be back to scream at you some more.
And I cannot wait to cover that and more tomorrow. We are going. I'm sorry, TK just sent me something that just changed my life. I'm so sorry. Did you see the ice change?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a Weapon X comic coming in Marvel and from Marvel in March, and that's like, oh my god, it's Christos Gage. Stop it!
But you know what it's called Weapons of X or Weapons of X-Men, but you know what it's about.
Could it tie into original X-Men #1?
No, well, no. Anyway, we're gonna get into that more
in the article. Anyway, so okay, Scream, can't wait. We're gonna do the other half next week. It's gonna be super awesome. The other thing about 5 and 6 is that they really do advance the series into a much more modern film aesthetic, and I'm really excited to talk about how the films that predominate how we see media now are better represented through 5 and 6, even if 5 and 6 aren't the screamsiest at times. But
I mean, this has become a powerhouse franchise again in the last few years. You know, 4 came out in 2011, and I was clearly an attempt to see if there was room, but then nothing happened, and we waited almost another.
Weinstein stuff started to happen as well. They did.
Yeah, I mean,
Weinstein stuff happened. And
yeah,
here we are.
But you know, we went another almost 10 years before we got anything, and I really do think it's good that what happened was really a monumental shift that has reset our perception of the Scream franchise and means that now we can kind of, you know, it's called Scream 5. We call them Scream 5 and 6, but like this does feel like Scream Volume 2, parts 1 and 2, with this last one that is soon to be coming, hopefully with Melissa Barrera and Nev Campbell as being part 3 of the second volume. But either way, it's really cool that this franchise has had the evolution that it has had and continues to have steam. I'm excited to get into it, and maybe when we talk about the next few entries, we'll also talk about our hopes for the future.
Yeah.
And just to circle back as a final note, there's a lot of rumors that Scream 7 is going to be snow or Christmas kind of wintry themed. So that'd be pretty exciting. I also want to say big thanks to Beyond Behind the Mask, which is an unbelievable Scream YouTube channel. He has done such a phenomenal job completely mapping out the history of Scream and Scream changes script to script. And really does a beautiful job respecting the art, and I'm such a big fan, and so just a big thanks there. And okay, let's wrap this thing up. Kevo, where can everybody find you on the interwebs until tomorrow?
You can find me at Kev O'Reilly. That's KEVOREALLY. And Teak, where can people scream at you?
You can find me at TK Elemental. Nico, where can everybody find you?
You guys can stab me over at Nico Action. That's NICOACTION. And until next time, we need you guys to do 3 things. Number 1, stay safe. There's a ghost face on the loose. Number 2, be brave. There's a ghost face on the loose. Number 3, evolve daily like the ghost faces. And we'll see ya.